Chapter 568. The GAO family has been developing deep-sea resources. During this period of time, the water world dimensional rift has released a large amount of spirit chi, causing many of the deep-sea phase to be abnormally active. This allowed the GAO family to capture plenty of production-type deep-sea phase. These newly captured large-scale production deep-sea phase are making the GAO family's creation masters crazy busy. But my marine fae breeding base has just been built, and the GAO family's creation masters are all busy. As a result, I am in a situation where I don't have any creation masters to use. Gao Feng's words were abnormally straightforward and didn't hide anything from Lin Yuan. If he built a marine fae breeding base to artificially nurture those delicate marine faes in the sea, the marine faes might be nurtured to death if he wasn't careful. The death of one marine fae meant that Gao Feng's breeding had a problem, and it was likely that a large number of marine faes would die, causing Gao Feng to lose everything. The coral jade that Gao Feng needed to be nurtured by the creation masters was made of coral jade texture. When the creation masters used high-purity spirit chi to nurture the jade-transformed coral, the polyps that made up the coral would become active and produce fine insect patterns inside the coral jade. By grinding the insect patterns and sprinkling them into the marine fae breeding bases pool, it would create a deep-sea environment. Furthermore, once the insect patterns were eaten by the marine faes, it could accelerate their growth and allow them to be in a healthy state. The insect patterns could also significantly help and promote the marine phase breeding. Gao Feng wanted to use the insect patterns to nurture some marine phase that could be used as a mother for his marine fae breeding base. Lin Yuan pondered for a moment and said, "I can help you with the insect patterns." Gao Feng's face bloomed with joy, but he was a little embarrassed. On the other side of the phone, Gao Feng's face bloomed with joy. However, Gao Feng was a little embarrassed as he whispered. Lin Yuan's spirit lock spatial zone had already poured out a space, and he had been thinking about how to use it. Lin Yuan's spirit lock spatial zone had already poured out a piece of space, and he had been thinking about how to use it. Lin Yuan's spirit lock spatial zone could only nurture the insect patterns, but it couldn't nurture the corals into ordinary coral jade. However, his spirit lock spatial zone could nurture coral jade with insect patterns, but there was no way to nurture corals into ordinary coral jade. Even with the spirit lock spatial zone, it would take a very long time to nurture the corals into ordinary coral jade. The formation of coral jade required the corals to be deposited in the deep sea for hundreds of thousands of years and nourished by the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. It was a mineral that could only be found at the bottom of the sea. Lin Yuan could buy it if he wanted to. However, the Gao family had been developing deep-sea resources, so they should have plenty of ordinary coral jades. As long as you can provide me with ordinary coral jade raw materials, I can provide you with 300 pounds of coral jade with insect patterns every 10 days. When Gao Feng heard Lin Yuan's words, his body started to cough violently. His lips trembled as he spoke. 300 pounds? Brother, I have plenty of coral jades. But 150 kilograms of worm-patterned coral jade is simply too much. Even if you can provide it for me, I can't afford it. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan asked with a thought. This marine fae breeding base was built by you. Since I can provide you with the creation master resources that you need, I will give it to you. Then why don't you think about building a bigger marine fae breeding base? When Gao Feng heard Lin Yuan's words, his eyes flickered as he vaguely understood Lin Yuan's intention. He said that he couldn't afford 150 kilograms of coral jade with insect patterns, but Lin Yuan still said that he wanted to provide him resources. It meant that Lin Yuan wanted to use the method of becoming a shareholder during the transaction to provide him with creation master resources. Gao Feng had always been very resistant to this method of becoming a shareholder. If someone became a shareholder, it would mean that a portion of the marine fae breeding base would already belong to someone else. When Gao Feng first called Lin Yuan had expressed the intention of becoming a shareholder. Even if Gao Feng treated Lin Yuan as a friend, Gao Feng wouldn't have hesitated to reject. However, it was different now, and Gao Feng was currently in the most difficult situation. Lin Yuan didn't hesitate to provide help to Gao Feng and poured in a huge amount of creation master resources that Gao Feng didn't expect. This would allow Gao Feng to establish a rising faction that would far exceed his expectations. Gao Feng muttered for a long time and gritted his teeth after making a decision. Brother, if you can provide me with 150 kilograms of coral jade with insect patterns every 10 days, you don't need to care about anything else in the marine fey breeding base. We will split the shares 50-50. Lin Yuan was shocked by Gao Feng's 50-50 split. Coral jade with insect patterns was something that couldn't form in the deep sea. Even though the spirit qi concentration in the deep sea was very high, it still couldn't reach the conditions for the coral jade to produce insect patterns. It could only be nurtured by high-class creation masters with pure spirit qi. However, the coral jade with insect patterns had very little effect and could only be considered a spiritual ingredient that was very useful for aquatic phase. Only when Gao Feng was preparing to establish a marine fey breeding base would there be such a huge demand. It could be said that providing 150 kilograms of coral jade with insect patterns every 10 days was equivalent to providing Gao Feng with high-class creation master resources. Lin Yuan didn't expect that these creation master resources would actually be equivalent to 50% of the shares in Gao Feng's eyes. With 50% of the shares, it was the same as Lin Yuan becoming the owner of the marine fey breeding base together with Gao Feng. It was reasonable to say that Gao Feng was establishing a rising faction, and it was impossible for him to split the control of a rising faction equally with others. However, Gao Feng chose to split the shares equally with Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan could see Gao Feng's sincerity in cooperating. Lin Yuan also immediately responded to Gao Feng's sincerity. Apart from the coral jade with insect patterns, you will also need pure elemental energy when you are nurturing marine phase in large quantities. I have plenty of Heavenly Maiden grade elemental pearls. If you need them, you can give them to me. Upon hearing that, Gao Feng suddenly felt relieved. Previously, Gao Feng was a little impulsive when he gave Lin Yuan 50% of the shares. Now, Gao Feng suddenly felt abnormally at ease working with Lin Yuan. There were plenty of rising factions that nurtured marine phase, and the competition between them was also very intense. The injection of high-quality creation master resources could fundamentally increase the competitiveness of a rising faction that relied on nurturing marine phase. Gao Feng had established a rising faction and could use the Gao family's massive resources in the deep sea. However, Gao Feng obviously wouldn't rely on the Gao family for everything. Otherwise, it would be meaningless for him to establish a rising faction. Chapter 2 Sad smiley end of this chapter. Chapter 569. Gao Feng was too embarrassed to mention the Heavenly Maiden grade elemental pearls to Lin Yuan. Gao Feng knew that Lin Yuan had obtained a few young elemental shellfish from him and should have elemental pearls on hand. However, now that a large number of elemental shellfish had evolved into exploding pearl shellfish, elemental pearls were too precious. Gao Feng planned to secretly think of a way to get some from the Gao family. But now, Lin Yuan had poured in resources like Heavenly Maiden grade elemental pearls. This made Gao Feng, who was born in the richest Gao family in Wind Mist City, suddenly feel that he had found someone to rely on. This was the first time Gao Feng had felt this. However, Gao Feng felt that it was really cool. Brother, if you can provide me with resources like Heavenly Maiden grade elemental pearls, I'll be very grateful to you. For every Heavenly Maiden grade elemental pearl you give me, I'll charge it at the current market price. It's just that after giving you 50% of the shares, I really can't give you any more shares. But I can give you 10% of the profits from the shares. What do you think, brother? Lin Yuan didn't reject Gao Feng's suggestion. Right now, he and Gao Feng were discussing a business deal, or rather, a collaboration to develop a new power together. Gao Feng took out the Gao family's rich resources and business channels in the deep sea. Meanwhile, Lin Yuan took out creation master resources. Lin Yuan would still help Gao Feng if he had to. However, when discussing business, Lin Yuan would not reject the benefits that he deserved. From Gao Feng's words, Lin Yuan could tell that Gao Feng hoped to obtain the dominance of the marine fey breeding base. Not only did Lin Yuan not object to this, but he also agreed with it. Anyway, he did not have the energy and time to develop this marine fey breeding base with Gao Feng. The best way for Lin Yuan was to wait for the dividends. Therefore, Lin Yuan said straightforwardly, "Even if I get 50% of the shares, I will only participate in the dividends. I will not manage it. Therefore, in the future, Brother Gao's new forces will need to be developed by you." When Gao Feng heard Lin Yuan's words, he felt that Lin Yuan was simply too particular. When he expressed his intention to discuss business with Lin Yuan immediately responded. He couldn't pretend to be ignorant like the others. Even though he was discussing business with Lin Yuan, Gao Feng felt very relaxed. After Lin Yuan and Gao Feng finalized the cooperation, Gao Feng became ordinary friends. He and Gao Feng had become ordinary friends because of the 2 deals they had made. Now, this marine fey breeding base made him and Gao Feng into a partnership. This meant that Lin Yuan could easily obtain the Gao family's deep-sea resources through Gao Feng's relationship, which was related to his own interests. After negotiating with Gao Feng, Lin Yuan didn't forget to talk about himself. "Brother Gao, can you get a top-grade angelfish of bliss from your side?" Brother of Gao smiled and said, "Brother, it's not easy to get a top-grade angelfish of bliss. If you had asked me to help you get a top-grade angelfish of bliss a month ago, I might have recommended you to try your luck at the veteran faction, the Aquarium of Bliss. But it just so happened that when the spirit chi on the surface of the sea increased a while ago, a school of angelfish of bliss floated to the surface of the deep sea that our Gao family developed and was caught. Spirit chi of a fairy fish, to say, there, but to say, it to say to, fairy to, it, to say, to, Gao, our Gao family is also planning to nurture this batch of fairy kingfish. Brother, if you want, I can get you at least 20 of them, Yi Futian said with a smile. It's a pity that when we were capturing these angelfish of bliss, one of the best female angelfish of bliss had a belly full of fish eggs, so it fought back fiercely and suffered serious injuries. The price to treat this injured female fairy kingfish was too high, and we couldn't guarantee the survival of the eggs, so we gave up. At this point, Gao Feng sighed. What a pity. Lin Yuan heard Gao Feng's words and thought. The 20 supreme-grade angelfish of bliss that had shed their fish coats would be enough for the daily consumption of the spiritual type phase in the manor. It was a pity that Lin Yuan wanted to rear the fairy kingfish of fairy kingfish in the expanded artificial lake. For Lin Yuan's goal, 20 fairy kingfish of fairy kingfish of fairy kingfish were not enough. Even if the Gao family brought all 50 fairy kingfish of fairy kingfish, it was still far from enough. However, he was rather interested in the injured female fairy fish that Gao Feng had mentioned. He had the spirit pool in his spirit lock spatial zone and the 3 Mountain River Eternal Life Carp's exclusive skill, Place of Life. Lin Yuan had absolute confidence in saving this supreme-grade angelfish of bliss and allowing the eggs in its stomach to hatch smoothly. This wasn't Lin Yuan's first time being a midwife. He had helped to deliver the spirit siphon goldfish that he had traded with Ju Jusin in the spirit pool. Brother Gao, I'll have to trouble you to get me 20 top-grade angelfish of bliss, including that injured female fish. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Gao Feng knew that Lin Yuan wanted to try to save this female fish, so he immediately agreed. Lin Yuan said before hanging up the phone, "It just so happens that you can send me some ordinary coral jade before the new year. I'll start cultivating them first. Every time the spirit lock spatial zone was empty, there would be a huge loss. Therefore, the spirit lock spatial zone had to be used as soon as possible." After hanging up the phone, Lin Yuan realized that he had unknowingly opened up another big stall. It could be considered another physical industry apart from the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. When Lin Yuan had called him, Zhu Luo had been sitting beside Lin Yuan and listening to him finish the call. Now that Lin Yuan had hung up, Zhu Luo asked, "Young master, what business do you have with me?" Lin Yuan looked at Zhu Luo and said, "Uncle Zhu, how's the progress of your dark snake dragon lizard?" Zhu Luo scratched the back of his head. "Young master, I've only just formed a contract with the dark snake Japalura. I haven't had the time to train it yet. The dark snake Japalura is still the same as when you gave it to me. Ju Luo didn't mean that he didn't have the time to nurture it. It was just that Ju Luo was too embarrassed to take out the resources needed to cultivate the dark snake Japalura. It was just that it was too shameful to say such things out loud. Lin Yuan heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Ju Luo did not immediately start cultivating the dark snake Japalura after obtaining it. If Ju Luo were to immediately nurture the dark snake dragon lizard and upgrade it from bronze to silver, the dark snake dragon lizard would not be able to survive. Lin Yuan really didn't know how he should pour resources into Ju Luo. More for the Twilight Melodies. Seeking recommendation votes and monthly votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 570. Brother Ju, since you haven't nurtured the dark snake Japalura and only signed a contract with it, Ju Weiqing said. Why don't you leave your dark snake Japalura with me for now? I'll help you upgrade its grade. When Ju Luo heard Lin Yuan's words, his eyes nearly popped out. Ju Luo did not know Lin Yuan's foundation like the others, but what Lin Yuan meant was that he wanted to upgrade the dark snake dragon lizard to legend. Regardless of whether it was at bronze or silver, the dark snake dragon lizard's quality had been upgraded to legendary quality. These were all things that Ju Luo could only dream of in his current situation. Young master, before Ju Luo could finish his sentence, Lin Yuan continued. I remember that Brother Ju still has an empty willpower rune. Brother Ju, show me your third willpower rune. At that time, Big Brother Ju will also evolve the second and third phase into fantasy breed. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Ju Luo's face was immediately filled with joy. Ju Luo understood that his performance in the dimensional rift outside Indigo Azure City had made Lin Yuan truly regard him as one of them. He was now ready to pour a lot of resources into himself to increase his strength. Ju Luo had long been loyal to Lin Yuan, and receiving Lin Yuan's praise was undoubtedly his best opportunity. Ju Luo naturally had to hold on tight. Lin Yuan smacked his lips when he sensed the third willpower rune that Ju Luo had comprehended. The willpower rune that Ju Luo comprehended had a sticky, earthy quality to it. It was considered a rather versatile willpower rune and was very suitable for defense-type phase. During these 2 days, Lin Yuan did not work as hard as usual. Instead, he slowed down and lived a leisurely life for 2 days. After experiencing life and death, he felt the lively atmosphere in the Radiance Federation that was about to celebrate the new year. He felt that the whole world was abnormally beautiful. During the past 2 days, everyone in the manor would go shopping on the streets. As a result, the New Year's goods that were stored in the Fey storage boxes were enough to last until next year's. Chu Ci had also pulled Lin Yuan to paste many fortune characters in the mansion. Even the red sandalwood longevity fish tank had 2 red paper flowers that said, more than every year. These ordinary paper flowers and fortune characters did not affect the overall beauty of the house. Instead, they made the house more cozy. Less than half a day after Lin Yuan and Gao Feng had come to an agreement, Gao Feng and Gao Feng had arrived. Ostrich Logistics had delivered 1,500 catties of ordinary coral jade in a Fey storage box. As for the 19 angelfish of bliss and the severely injured female angelfish of bliss, Gao Feng had arranged for them to be sent over as well. When the 19 supreme grade angelfish of bliss were sent over, Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. The 19 supreme grade angelfish of bliss were all covered in 5 different colors. Their tails and fins were unusually thin, like a thin layer of silver yarn. However, when the angelfish of bliss began to swim, its fins and tail would flicker with 6-colored rays of light. It was an exceptionally enchanting sight. When Lin Yuan looked at the angelfish of bliss's posture, he felt as though he was looking at a hazy young lady draped in a veil. Looking at it, it really did give him a sense of bliss. He raised these 19 supreme grade angelfish of bliss in the artificial lake. Even though the current environment of the artificial lake was different from the original living environment of the angelfish of bliss, due to the mountain river eternal life carp's exclusive skill, place of life, the angelfish of bliss was able to survive. These angelfish of bliss were abnormally comfortable in the artificial lake and didn't show any signs of discomfort. As for the dying female supreme-grade angelfish of bliss, Lin Yuan raised it in the spirit pool. This female supreme-grade angelfish of bliss's injuries were truly too severe. It was no wonder why the Gao family had decided to give up on this female supreme-grade angelfish of bliss and didn't put in any effort to treat it. Lin Yuan saw that the female supreme-grade angelfish of bliss's fins and tail were almost ground away. Due to the intense struggle when it was being caught, there were plenty of giant cracks on its body. These giant cracks were already faintly rotting. However, after 2 days of nourishment from the spirit pool's dense spirit qi, a thin layer of new flesh had already grown out from the rotting cracks. Lin Yuan had already instructed the spirit-attracting ichthyosaur, Black. He had asked Black to take care of this dying female supreme-grade angelfish of bliss. Otherwise, Lin Yuan was afraid that the carcinoma fei, the sea burial lotus flower, would make a move on this female supreme-grade angelfish of bliss. After 2 days of recuperation, this female supreme-grade angelfish of bliss now had the strength to occasionally feed on the butterfly shell flowers at the bottom of the spirit pool. Lin Yuan just needed to wait for this female supreme-grade angelfish of bliss to fully recover and expel its eggs in the spirit pool. Unlike Lin Yuan's 2 days of leisure, Hu Quan had been working overtime for the past 2 days. In the dead of night, he would use his exquisite hands to create artistic sparks. Hu Quan wasn't just working overtime for these 2 days. Ever since the forest had left Indigo Azure City, Hu Quan had never stopped working overtime. Wen Yu naturally didn't approve of Hu Quan working overtime late into the night. However, she didn't expect Hu Quan to secretly contract a special fei, the Essence Qi Sloth. The Essence Qi Sloth would normally be sleeping and accumulating Essence Qi. These Essence Qi Sloths relied on sleeping to accumulate Essence Qi. When the Essence Qi Sloth used its abilities, it would be transmitted to the contractor. Due to the difference in spiritual energy, the number of contracted feis would also be different. However, the quantity was also limited. In order to maximize their combat power, combat-class spirit qi professionals needed to think carefully before contracting a fei. As a Class 5 spirit craftsman, Hu Quan decided to contract a Essence Qi Sloth that helped him sleep just to be able to work overtime better. It was really a little willful. When you couldn't do anything about the willful Hu Quan would no longer affect his body if he didn't sleep, and when you couldn't force him to lie on the bed. Therefore, when you could only go with Hu Quan. Even when you, who had grown up in the Radiant Moon Palace and had high horizons, admired Hu Quan from the bottom of her heart. At this moment, he was convinced by Hu Quan from the bottom of his heart and was willing to sincerely call him the Liver Emperor. Hu Quan had worked overtime for half a month and had perfectly realized many of Lin Yuan's previous ideas and designs with his Class 5 spirit craftsman ability. In particular, Hu Quan had already made what was needed for the design of the rooms in Lin Yuan's Star Web private territory. Lin Yuan thought to himself as he looked at the things Hu Quan had created. He had bought his Star Web faction territory a long time ago, but it had been idle and had not been put into use. Now that everything was ready, the functions of his Star Web faction could be announced. However, Lin Yuan still had a lot of things to do during the new year. Moreover, Lin Yuan still needed to scan the things Hu Quan had made into Star Web for some arrangements. Therefore, after discussing with everyone, Lin Yuan set the time to announce the functions of the Star Web faction territory on the 3rd day after the new year. Lin Yuan, Wen Yu, Chu Ci, Liu Jie, the mother of Bloodbath, and Endless Summer were sitting on the water rhinoceros leather sofa and watching the Guild Alliance's S-Tournament quarterfinals. As a Radiance 100 sequence member, Liu Jie told Chu Ci about the abilities and contracted phase of every 100 sequence member that appeared on the battlefield. As a member of the Radiance 100 sequence, Liu Jie naturally knew things that could not be found on Star Web. Liu Jie's explanation was an eye-opener for Chu Ci. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly felt a throbbing feeling coming from the depths of his soul. He heard an unusually clear and ethereal voice ringing in the depths of his soul. "My lord." Upon hearing this voice coming from the depths of his soul, Lin Yuan went straight to his room. This was because the sacred source life form, the Grace Queen, and the sacred source life form, the Enforcement Sword, had completed their fusion. Lin Yuan urged the power in the depths of his soul. He summoned the new sacred source lifeform formed by the fusion of the two sacred source lifeforms in his marrow contract. Chapter 571. After summoning his sacred source lifeform, the girl in the knee-length dress holding a sacred sword appeared in front of him. Her eyes were closed, and her eyes were closed. The girl's tightly shut eyes trembled slightly. Just as the girl was about to open her eyes, an aura burst forth with her as the center. As his contracted sacred source lifeform, the aura released by Lin Yuan's sacred source lifeform did not affect him at all. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not feel anything special about this aura. However, the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer, who were sitting on the water rhinoceros leather sofa and watching the quarterfinals of the S tournament with everyone else, were shocked. As Myth-breed phase, the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer had comprehended law runes. The aura from Lin Yuan's room made the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer feel as though the law runes they had comprehended had become ornaments for others to play with. They were waiting to be picked and played with. This feeling made the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer look at each other in shock. Both of them could see the shock in each other's eyes. When Liu Jie felt this aura, he felt the depths of his soul tremble. Since Liu Jie possessed a sacred source lifeform, the owner of a sacred source lifeform would be able to sense the aura of a sacred source lifeform. Liu Jie immediately knew that this aura should be the first cry of Lin Yuan's sacred source lifeform completing the contract. Liu Jie, who had contracted a sacred source lifeform, and the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer had comprehended law runes, could feel the aura from Lin Yuan's room the most clearly. Chu Ci, who had also comprehended a willpower rune, could also faintly feel the aura from Lin Yuan's room that made her willpower rune a little abnormal. Chu Ci immediately got up and wanted to knock on Lin Yuan's door to see what was going on inside. However, Chu Ci was stopped by the mother of Bloodbath as soon as she got up and heard it say. The mother of Bloodbath said, "Chu Ci, your brother is a creation master." Lin Yuan must have gone to work when he returned to his room. After the previous incident, not only the mother of Bloodbath, but even Endless Summer was also on high alert at all times. Therefore, if one wanted to encounter danger in the mansion, they would have to have a creation breed fae that was extremely good at hiding to sneak in. Otherwise, with a fae like Endless Summer and a suzerain Myth 3 fae that was good at scouting with the Enlightenment law rune, it was impossible for a target to sneak into the mansion without being discovered. The mother of Bloodbath was also a little curious as to why Lin Yuan's room would emit such an aura. However, the mother of Bloodbath understood that when a creation master was working, no matter what happened, it should not disturb him. Upon hearing the mother of Bloodbath's words, Chu Ci immediately realized that she had been too concerned. If Lin Yuan was doing the work of a creation master, Lin Yuan's knocking might cause him to be distracted and cause him to make mistakes. Although she continued to sit on the water rhinoceros leather sofa and watch the S tournament duels, she would look at Lin Yuan's room door from time to time, looking a little absent-minded. Upon seeing this, the corners of Wen Yu's mouth curled up. When she recalled how Lin Yuan always talked about Chu Ci, she could not help but sigh at their sibling relationship. Lin Yuan looked at his contracted sacred source lifeform and felt its first cry. Lin Yuan knew that he could finally use the new sacred source lifeform formed by the fusion of the Grace Queen and the Sword of Punishment. Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check his sacred source lifeform's attributes. Sacred source name, Sacred Sword-wielding Queen, Sacred Source Species, Source Family, Sacred Source Species, Sacred Source Star, 0 stars, Sacred Source Type, : Lin Yuan finally knew the name of his sacred source lifeform. However, he realized that the sacred source lifeform's data was completely different from ordinary phase. This was because sacred source lifeforms were no longer categorized according to normal, elite, bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Their quality was no longer divided into normal, elite, flawless, epic, and legendary. Under True Data, sacred source lifeforms were categorized by star ranks. With the principle of understanding things he did not understand, Lin Yuan looked at the time. He realized that it was only 1:00 in the evening, so he called his master, the Moon Empress. The phone only rang a few times before the Moon Empress picked it up. Lin Yuan asked the question that he did not understand. When the Moon Empress heard Lin Yuan's question, she suddenly felt gratified. As a teacher, In addition to his usual question and answer practice, he finally had a chance to answer questions and dispel doubts. However, after a brief moment of gratification, the Moon Empress felt that she was neglecting her duties as a teacher. She already knew that Lin Yuan had contracted a sacred source lifeform, but during the question and answer exercise, she had mainly talked about sacred source lifeforms' contract knowledge. She had forgotten to introduce the difference between sacred source lifeforms, ordinary phase, and source-type lifeforms. The Moon Empress explained in detail to Lin Yuan. "You're right. Every sacred source lifeform has a unique and irreplaceable function. There is no absolute difference between functions, so sacred source lifeforms are no longer categorized by grade or quality. At the same time, because sacred source lifeforms do not require the contractor to fuse with a willpower rune, sacred source lifeforms are no longer categorized as fantasy breed, myth breed, or creation breed like ordinary phase and source-type lifeforms. Sacred source lifeforms have their own unique categorization. From 1 star to 12 star, there are a total of 12 grades, also known as the sacred source 12 stars. However, the sacred source lifeform star rank does not represent the sacred source lifeform's strength, but the degree of development of the sacred source lifeform's functions. When a sacred source lifeform is newly contracted, it will have a certain function. Every time the sacred source lifeform increases by 3 star, it will undergo a transformation and unlock one of its functions. According to the star rank, the sporadic to 3-star sacred source lifeforms are known as the infant stage. The 4-star to 6-star sacred source lifeforms are known as the growth stage. The 7-star to 9-star sacred source lifeforms are known as the mature stage. The 10-star to 12-star sacred source lifeforms are known as the complete stage. After listening to the Moon Empress explanation, Lin Yuan immediately understood what was going on with the sacred source lifeforms categorization. This made Lin Yuan even more aware of the importance of knowledge. A thought suddenly appeared in Lin Yuan's mind: knowledge is power. The moment this thought appeared in Lin Yuan's mind, he felt that the willpower of knowledge in his mind seemed to have increased a little. Chapter 572. Just as Lin Yuan thought he was about to condense the knowledge-related willpower rune, something unexpected happened. However, something unexpected happened. This knowledge willpower rune that was related to knowledge did not condense as smoothly as Lin Yuan had expected. Instead, it was forcefully stuck there. If he had only been one layer away from comprehending the knowledge-related willpower rune, he would have broken a hole in it. He had already smashed a hole in the membrane and was about to drill out of it when he was caught by the membrane. This feeling of being stuck between a rock and a hard place, as if he was suspended in the air, made him rather depressed. For the first time, Lin Yuan felt that it was very difficult to comprehend a willpower rune. However, since he had a little more understanding of the knowledge-related willpower rune, he was one step closer to truly comprehending it. Unlike Lin Yuan's depression, the Moon Empress was abnormally happy after hanging up the phone. At that moment, Mystic Moon walked into the inner palace and spoke softly to the Moon Empress. "Moon Empress, I have settled the matter that you asked me to do. I can head to the Divine Wood Federation's Agorwan continent at any time and help Your Highness choose a suitable location to build the spatial tunnel." When the Moon Empress heard that, she placed the teacup on the jade table. "Mystic Moon, I remember that your sacred source lifeform is stuck at 8-star and is still a step away from 9-star. This time, Zish's main body returned from the outer realm and brought you something. It might be able to help your sacred source lifeform break through from 8-star to 9-star and gain an additional function. Zish's main body will arrive in a few days. It won't be too late to leave after you have a good new year and try to break through to 9-star. Mystic Moon still had that clear expression on his face, but his relaxed brows revealed the excitement in his heart. If I can really raise the sacred source lifeform star class to 9-star, and the sacred source lifeform gains a new function, the entire star web will undergo a major update. The Moon Empress nodded. The star web is a product of the combined functions of 3 sacred source lifeforms. As far as I know, Space Old RAO's sacred source lifeform, Hollow Crystal Mother Shellfish, has broken through not long ago. It seems like the first Radiance 100 sequence test on the star web will be even more exciting. After hanging up the phone, he shook his head to get rid of the gloomy feeling in his mind. Then, He checked the abilities of the sacred sword-wielding queen. Function: sad smiley princess form, princess's skirt, can extract the willpower rune from dead phase or source-type items. He also carved the will of the dead fantasy breed phase willpower rune or the myth breed phase lore crystal onto the princess's skirt. At the same time, the lore crystal that was extracted would turn into a lore crystal that contained pure lore power. Holy sword form, blade of the holy sword. The blade of the sword pierces through the hem of the skirt and consumes the spiritual energy in the body to release the same type of rules and willpower accumulated in the skirt. Lin Yuan almost bit his tongue off after taking a look. His sacred source lifeform was indeed a fusion of two sacred source lifeforms. Not only did it have two forms, but each form also had a function. In Lin Yuan's opinion, having one function in each of the two forms was no different from having two functions. It seemed like the two functions in the two forms could be interlinked. However, for the sacred sword form's blade to display its effect, it had to rely on the princess form's ability and the will engraved on the princess's skirt. Obviously, the sacred sword form's ability could not be used without the support of the princess form's skirt. From this aspect, it could be seen that the Grace Queen had played a leading role in the fusion of the Grace Queen and the sacred source lifeform, the Sword of Enforcement. But no matter what, it was double the joy for Lin Yuan. Among the two abilities, the princess form's ability made Lin Yuan feel that after possessing the sacred source lifeform, the sacred sword embracing princess, he possessed the ability that only Class 5 creation masters could possess. It is able to cultivate pure rule force. However, Class 5 creation masters used a variety of rare spiritual ingredients, including lore runes, to create spirit liquids that contained the power of lore. Lin Yuan relied on the sacred sword-wielding queen's skirt form's ability. Different lore crystals were like different flavors of beverages. After removing the taste, the essence of the beverage was water. The princess's skirt extracted the lore crystal's special lore energy, turning it into a lore crystal that contained only the power of lore. However, Lin Yuan was unable to quickly increase the phase grade. With the sacred source lifeform, the sacred sword-embracing queen, Lin Yuan's creation master abilities had reached the standard of a Class 5 creation master. It was different from the lore crystals that would automatically be produced after the death of a myth breed fae. After the death of a fantasy breed fae, if its body was intact, the willpower rune would continue to remain in its body. However, if the fantasy breed fae's body was split into various spiritual ingredients, in the process of splitting into spiritual ingredients, the willpower rune remaining in the fantasy breed fae's body would dissipate. Even a Class 5 creation master would not be able to extract the willpower rune of a fantasy breed fae or source-type lifeform. Unless there was a situation where the lore was stripped like the mother of Bloodbath and Fei Chenxiong's blood-toothed cricket. As for the princess's ability to extract the willpower rune from a dead fae or source-type lifeform's body, it would make it easier for Lin Yuan to gather willpower to supply the sacred sword form's sword carries. After all, even if Lin Yuan had a few lore crystals now, he would not be able to get them again unless his enemies gave them to him. Otherwise, it would not be so easy to obtain them. If everyone was a type of fae, Lin Yuan felt that he was definitely a production-type fae like the Usnea. Morbius Spirit Lock Spatial Zone and the Sacred Source Lifeform, the Sacred Sword-Embracing Queen, allowed him to become a top-notch producer. The Sacred Sword form's ability to use willpower and lore as an attack method. Lin Yuan could not help but feel that his Sacred Source Lifeform was treating the superior willpower and lore as a toy. Moreover, it wasn't just a feeling, but a fact. Just as Lin Yuan was checking on the Sacred Sword-Wielding Queen, the Sacred Sword-Wielding Queen opened its eyes and looked at him. The Sacred Sword-Wielding Queen opened its eyes and looked at Lin Yuan. After the Marrow contract, the Sacred Source Lifeform was like a newborn with super high intelligence. Its understanding of the world was still a blank piece of paper. But when the Sacred Sword-Wielding Monarch saw the changing expressions on her contestant's face, she felt that her contestant's brain wasn't that smart. Chapter 573. The Sacred Sword-Wielding Queen, a sacred source lifeform with super intelligence, blinked. It could not help but worry about its future. What if his contestant wasn't very smart? This was a question worthy of careful consideration. The sacred sword-wielding queen struggled for a moment and realized that its contractor was still sizing it up. Its expression changed from astonishment to contemplation. It changed from contemplation to conflict and finally to astonishment. The sacred sword-wielding queen could not help but clear its throat and speak in an ethereal voice. "Master, I have just been born. Please use your will to bestow me with a name." Upon hearing the sacred source lifeform's words, Lin Yuan immediately confirmed that the sacred source lifeform's intelligence was indeed higher than that of ordinary phase. Only lifeforms with high intelligence and the ability to think independently would be obsessed with their own name the moment they were born. It was just like how a lifeform needed a mark and a name to prove itself. Lin Yuan understood why his master, the Moon Empress, had repeatedly emphasized the importance of a marrow contract with a sacred source lifeform with such high intelligence. If he formed a blood contract with the sacred source lifeform, as long as there was a difference of opinion between the two lifeforms with high intelligence like the sacred source lifeform, it was very likely that the two parties would not be able to unify their strength in battle. However, Lin Yuan did not have to worry about this. No matter how high the sacred source lifeform's intelligence was, after the marrow contract, the sacred sword-wielding queen had fused with his soul and was considered a part of his soul. Lin Yuan did not know that he had just summoned his sacred source lifeform. His sacred source lifeform had already thought that he was not very smart. Lin Yuan felt that he was very good at coming up with names. Smart was very smart, so it was called Smart. Chimey was a sound bird and could sing, so it was called Chimey. The spirit-drawing dragonfish was black, so it was called Black. It was simple, friendly, and generous. Lin Yuan looked at the sacred sword-wielding queen's plain white dress and asked, "White, what do you think? White, what do you think?" Sacred source lifeform, the sacred sword-wielding queen subtly hugged the sword in her arms. When it had fused with Lin Yuan's soul, the sacred sword-wielding queen had digested the memories and knowledge in Lin Yuan's soul. Upon hearing the word white, the sacred sword-wielding queen could not help but have many question marks appear on its head. Shouldn't a name like Bye-Bye be given to the kind of white dog that would stupidly pounce on humans and wag its tail happily, in order not to be called Bye-Bye by his contractor? The sacred source lifeform, the sacred sword-wielding queen, hurriedly spoke in an ethereal voice. "Master, I'll call you Pill." At that moment, the newly born sacred source lifeform, sacred sword-wielding queen, suddenly made up her first plan ever since she was born. Contractor's dumb brain development project. The reason why he named the pill was to treat it as an inspirational pill. By the side of the contestant, he would allow the contestant's brain to become the smartest person in the world. Lin Yuan was taken aback when he heard the sacred source lifeform's name. Isn't this name a little too ordinary? How could it be better than white? Thus, Lin Yuan gave a friendly suggestion. How about white pills? The sacred source lifeform, sacred sword-wielding queen, accepted her contractor's suggestion without rejecting it. After all, his contestant wasn't too smart, and he had already decided on the name of the pill. If he still did not accept his contractor's suggestion, it would be disrespectful in the eyes of the sacred sword-wielding queen. That would be too unreasonable. The sacred sword-wielding queen gently clenched her fists, firmly believing that she was here. Her contractor would definitely give her a better name than white pills in the future. In any case, it did not matter what color the pill was, as long as it could make the contestant smarter. It was a good medicine. Lin Yuan had not seen any other sacred source lifeforms. However, when he thought about the sacred source lifeform, the hollow crystal mother shellfish, he could confirm that the hollow crystal mother shellfish was not humanoid, but a shellfish lifeform. In addition, the sword of punishment that he had fused with two sacred source lifeforms was not humanoid, but a tool. Therefore, Lin Yuan concluded that the sacred source lifeform could take any form. Although his sacred source lifeform was humanoid, Lin Yuan realized that it was different from the humanoid form of a Myth 2 Fae. The sacred source lifeform, the sacred sword-wielding queen, was completely different from the human form of a Myth breed Fae when it reached Myth 2. The sacred sword-wielding queen was not corporeal, but a semi-corporeal existence. Suddenly, Lin Yuan remembered that his Diamond Fae storage box still contained the two dead dark-type fantasy breed Faes that Endless Summer had given him. These two dead dark-type fays were when Endless Summer had gone to protect Listen. Endless Summer had brought back the Diamond X Fantasy 4 Dark-Eyed Scorpion Tiger and the Diamond 8 Fantasy 3 Dark Spirit Eye Tadpole. The bodies of these two dead dark-type fantasy breed fays were preserved very well. Lin Yuan had not had time to deal with the bodies of the dead dark-eyed scorpion tiger and dark spirit eye tadpole, so he had kept them in the fey storage box. Now was the right time to test the sacred sword-wielding queen's function in her princess form and the ability of her skirt to extract the willpower rune of the dead fantasy breed fays. Lin Yuan summoned the dead dark-eyed scorpion tiger and dark spirit eye tadpole from his room. Fortunately, Lin Yuan's room was large enough. Otherwise, if the huge dark-eyed scorpion tiger was summoned, it might really damage the precious jade-textured wood in the room. When the sacred sword-wielding queen saw Lin Yuan summon the two dead fantasy breed fays, it immediately revealed a pure expression of desire. His face immediately revealed a pure expression of desire, as if he had seen a delicious meal. The sacred sword-wielding queen immediately pointed at the dark-eyed scorpion tiger and dark spirit eye tadpole on the ground and asked Lin Yuan, "Can I eat them?" Her tone and expression were like a child seeing a delicious snack and asking his parent if he could try it. Lin Yuan could not help but be a little speechless. He had previously felt that the sacred sword-wielding queen was playing with willpower and laws. But now, it seemed that the willpower in the willpower rune was not qualified to be played with by the sacred sword-wielding queen. It was only treated as a kind of food. Lin Yuan nodded gladly. Of course. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's reply, the sacred sword-wielding queen carried the sacred sword and walked in front of the dark-eyed scorpion tiger and dark spirit eye tadpole. The sacred sword returned with a flash of cold light and tore open the skin and flesh of the dark-eyed scorpion tiger and dark spirit eye tadpole. Then, the sacred sword-wielding queen's plain white skirt suddenly spread out two clumps of silk. These two clumps of silk followed the wounds made by the sacred sword and drilled into the dark-eyed scorpion tiger and dark spirit eye tadpole's bodies. Chapter 574. Then, the sacred sword-hugging queen tiptoed and lifted her skirt to dance gently. Immediately after, Lin Yuan discovered that the dark-eyed scorpion tiger and dark spirit eye tadpole, which had been injected with the threads, had a dark luster rising from their bodies. This dark luster contained a huge amount of darkness elements. It was as if the long-dead dark-eyed scorpion tiger and dark spirit eye tadpole had been resurrected under the effect of the threads in their bodies. In less than a minute, two wills appeared in these two masses of rising dark energy. These two wills followed the two threads toward the dancing queen. Although they were both related to darkness, the dark-eyed scorpion tiger's willpower was more focused on the endless murderous intent in the dark night. The dark spirit eye tadpole's willpower was more focused on the silence of the long night. Lin Yuan keenly noticed that as the two wills entered the princess's dress along the silk thread, the princess's dress slowly started to have color and faint veined patterns. The dark-eyed scorpion tiger and dark spirit eye tadpole that Endless Summer had brought back were extremely powerful fantasy breed fays and had been carefully nurtured by pinnacle king-class experts. The Diamond X Fantasy 4 Dark-Eyed Scorpion Tiger was almost at the level of a fantasy breed fae. However, the sacred sword-hugging queen's willpower runes in the Dark-Eyed Scorpion Tiger and Dark Spirit Eye Tadpole were quickly absorbed by the sacred sword-hugging queen. In just 5 minutes, the long-dead fantasy breed Dark-Eyed Scorpion Tiger and Dark Spirit Eye Tadpole no longer had any willpower that could be transmitted through the threads. Lin Yuan had been observing the dark-eyed scorpion tiger and dark spirit eye tadpole and found that after losing their willpower, the rich dark energy in their bodies did not decrease. The corners of Lin Yuan's lips raised. It seemed that the dead fantasy breed fays that had their willpower and energy extracted by the queen's skirt did not hinder the use of their various parts as spiritual ingredients. Lin Yuan shifted his gaze from the dead dark-eyed scorpion tiger and dark spirit eye tadpole to the sacred sword-hugging queen again. He was stunned by the sacred sword-hugging queen's appearance on the skirt. If the holy sword-wielding queen was dressed in a plain white dress, she would look exceptionally plain and untainted by the mortal world. After absorbing the wills of the dark-eyed scorpion tiger and the dark soul eye tadpole, the sacred sword-wielding queen's dress had turned a deep black color. The aura of the sacred sword-wielding queen changed completely. Now, the queen's dress was engraved with two wills, making the queen, who was hugging the sacred sword, look like a traveler who was strolling in the night and could not find her way home. The sacred sword-wielding queen's ink-colored dress didn't seem to have that kind of thick ink-colored fabric. Like the night fog, it carried a hazy, ethereal, and graceful ink color. It was like a corner of the night sky, with the silence of the long night. However, upon closer inspection, there was a murderous aura that sent chills down one's spine. It was as if a scorpion tiger was lurking in the night, ready to attack its prey at any time. The sacred sword-wielding queen didn't just change her appearance. Under true data, Lin Yuan keenly discovered that the sacred sword-wielding queen's previous display was. The sacred source element had already changed to the darkness element. However, the star level was still 0. Lin Yuan thought to himself, is the sacred sword-wielding queen's element determined by the wills and laws it absorbs? Lin Yuan shook his hand, and a blue crystal with 2 golden engravings appeared in his hand. This crystal was the law crystal that the mother of Bloodbath had taken from the cold snowpine's body when it had just broken through to Myth 2. Just by looking at the indistinct golden mark, one could tell that the cold snowpine's law crystal should be considered the weakest law crystal produced by a Myth 2 Fae. The cold snowpine's law crystal's cold flame law was also very unorthodox. However, the cold snowpine's law crystal was more complete and had a complete law. The queen, who had just eaten the 2 wills as snacks, looked at the law crystal that suddenly appeared in her contractor's hand. Her eyes widened. When Lin Yuan saw the queen's expression, he did not wait for her to speak and immediately handed over the cold snowpine's law crystal. When the sacred sword-wielding queen received it, she felt that her contractor might not be very smart, but he was simply too good to her. Lin Yuan watched as the sacred sword-wielding queen took the law crystal. After taking the cold snowpine's law crystal, the sacred sword-hugging queen pressed it against her head. She embedded the cold snowpine's law crystal into the crown that did not have any gemstones embedded on it. In an instant, the crown seemed to be ignited with blue ice flames, and the cold snowpine's law crystal released a dazzling, ice-blue luster. The sacred sword-wielding queen's skirt fluttered, revealing the delicate crystal shoes she was wearing. Lin Yuan realized that the ink on the queen's skirt was quickly compressed, and a huge snow pine made of all kinds of runes was carved on the skirt. The pine needles ignited with an ice-blue flame, dyeing the entire skirt in an ice-blue color. The original black color gathered under the cold snow pine's veined patterns like a shadow. Lin Yuan used true data to check and found that the sacred sword-wielding queen's sacred source type had changed from dark type to ice type. It was not ice type or dark type. Lin Yuan was sure that the 2 dark type willpower had not disappeared from the queen's skirt. Even the willpower of 2 dark type fantasy breed phase could not compare to the cold snowpine's law crystal at Myth 2. It could be seen that the queen's sacred source type was determined by the type of willpower that she absorbed. The type of willpower that was more important would determine the queen's sacred source type. Lin Yuan saw that the sacred sword-wielding queen had changed again. Her blue skirt was embroidered with the burning cold snow pine. Her aura had also become abnormally cold. Lin Yuan could not help but feel as though he was playing a costume-changing game. Lin Yuan thought for a moment and took out his remaining 2 law crystals. Since they were just sitting there, he might as well throw them to the sacred sword-wielding queen. The sacred sword-wielding queen swayed her skirt. At that moment, she felt that she was the happiest sacred source lifeform in the world. Of the 2 law crystals, one had come from the crow that had ambushed Endless Summer, and the other from Nightmare 6 from the Zheng family's night squad. They were both law crystals produced by Pinnacle Dark-type Myth 2 phase. The 2 golden carvings on them were very eye-catching. The sacred sword-wielding queen embedded Crow's law crystal, Night Deather's law crystal, and Nightmare VI's law crystal, Dead Dream's law crystal, onto the crown on her head. Chapter 575. Immediately after, Lin Yuan felt that the space in his room was instantly dyed black by the queen's dress. It was like a long night. After another hour, all the law energy within the law crystal was absorbed by the princess's Luo Kun. The sacred sword-wielding queen changed into another appearance. When he looked at the sacred sword-wielding queen, Lin Yuan felt as though he was looking at darkness itself. It was like looking straight into the darkness at the edge of an abyss. However, The queen's dress was now engraved with 2 dark-type wills and 2 dark-type laws. Under the boundless night, the queen's dress seemed to sink into a constantly withering, dying, and repeating remnant dream. Under the night sky, the only ice-blue cedar rose from the ground, bringing a bit of vitality to the dead dream world in the darkness. On the branches of the pine tree, a crow and a bat were perched on each side, looking abnormally strange. The 3 law crystals embedded in the crown on the sacred sword-wielding queen's forehead had also turned pure white. The pure white law crystals flashed with a sparkling substance. Lin Yuan knew that the sparkling and translucent substance was pure nomological energy. Lin Yuan keenly discovered that under true data, the sacred sword-wielding queen had now become a 1-star star. However, such a star-class increase did not surprise Lin Yuan. Instead, he felt some pressure. How much willpower and laws would the sacred source lifeform sacred sword-wielding queen need to nurture it into a high-class existence? Unlike Lin Yuan's pressure, the sacred sword-wielding queen was abnormally satisfied. The feeling of rising stars as soon as it was born was simply too great. However, the sacred sword-wielding queen did not know that after this feast, it would not be so easy to eat such a sumptuous feast again. As for the ability of the sacred sword form, Lin Yuan thought for a moment and felt that he should not experiment with it. He had spent so much to make the dress, and now it was slashed by the sacred sword. Lin Yuan did not know if the sacred sword-wielding queen was willing to bear it, but he definitely could not bear it. No matter how he thought about it, Lin Yuan felt that the sacred sword form's ability and the sacred sword blade were out-and-out prodigal. The sacred sword-wielding queen handed the 3 pure white crystals containing pure law energy on the crown to Lin Yuan. "Master, this is my leftover trash." Lin Yuan nearly fainted when he heard about his sacred source lifeform. His sacred source lifeform was too crazy. "Do you think this law crystal, which contains pure law energy, is trash?" Countless Emperor-class experts and myth-breed fays treat it as a treasure. He couldn't even beg for it if he wanted to. However, he recalled the sacred sword-wielding queen's eating method. He suddenly felt that there was nothing wrong with the 3 pure white crystals in his hand, which contained pure nomological energy, being regarded as the excrement of the sacred sword-wielding queen. Lin Yuan carefully put away the 3 crystals. Regardless of what the sacred sword-wielding queen thought it was, if the mother of Bloodbath wanted to become a creation breed, it would definitely need this pure white crystal that contained pure law energy. Lin Yuan looked at the sacred sword-wielding queen. She was no longer dressed in white like when he had named her. Instead, it became mainly black. Lin Yuan suggested, "It's not appropriate to call you White Pill now. How about Black Pill?" The sacred sword-wielding queen stared at her contractor in a daze. She suddenly felt that her stupid contractor brain development plan was about to be declared bankrupt. It had only been 2 hours since she had decided on her name, and her contractor had already changed it. The sacred sword-wielding queen did not want to complain about Lin Yuan's naming ability. Compared to White Pill, Black Pill was not inferior. If Lin Yuan could change her name to Brainless Pill, perhaps she would be more useful. Lin Yuan once again left his room and sat on the water rhinoceros leather sofa to watch the S-tournament duel with everyone else. Everyone could clearly feel that Lin Yuan's aura had changed. Previously, Lin Yuan was a cheerful youth that people would feel very amiable at first glance. Now, Lin Yuan's original foundation was shrouded in a layer of profound mystery. The sacred sword-wielding queen was considered a part of Lin Yuan's soul. After absorbing 3 types of laws and 2 types of willpower, the inscribed laws and willpower on the sacred sword-wielding queen's dress were also affecting Lin Yuan. He used his willpower and law energy to shield him from external detection abilities. When the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer, as myth-breed fays, realized that they could no longer sense Lin Yuan's spirit chi professional rank. The mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer quietly circulated the law runes in their bodies and found that they still could not accurately judge Lin Yuan's spirit chi professional rank. It was obvious that Lin Yuan had undergone a huge transformation after entering the house, allowing him to have the ability to shield himself from detection. If anyone else had such a huge improvement in such a short time, Endless Summer and the mother of Bloodbath would find it difficult and unbelievable. However, this had happened to Lin Yuan, and it had happened to him too many times. The mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer were already used to it. After watching the S tournament's matches, Chu Si said with some reluctance. From the looks of it, the S tournament doesn't have the same atmosphere as a live match. It would be great if I could watch a match live. Liu Jie suddenly thought of something and asked. On the second day of the new year, there happens to be an S tournament's all-star match. Although the all-star match isn't as formal and entertaining as the S tournament, it's a match that all the A-class and B-class clubs participate in. If Chu Si wants to watch the match live, I can get the tickets, and everyone can go together. Also, the highlight of the S tournament is that the audience has a chance to be selected as lucky audience and get the chance to challenge the S tournament celebrity members. Chu Si was very interested in watching the match live. As a reckless defense-type Spirit Chi professional, she heard that there was a chance to challenge the S tournament's members. Chu Si's eyes immediately lit up as she said to Lin Yuan, "Big brother, do you want to go? Big brother, do you want to go?" Lin Yuan could not help but laugh when he heard Chu Si's words. "It's important that you want to go, but you didn't ask me if I want to go." Chu Si usually called him by his name. Now that she had started to call him Big Brother, Lin Yuan naturally had no reason to refuse. The third day of the new year is the day when Sky City's Star Web private faction territory announces its functions to other rising and veteran factions. It just so happens that there's a day on the second day of the new year. We can go online and watch the S tournament's all-star match. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 576. Upon hearing that, Chu Si's face immediately revealed an excited and expectant smile. She stretched out her hand in front of her smiling face and made a yeah gesture to Lin Yuan. When Lin Yuan saw Chu Si's smile, he immediately smiled warmly, revealing his white teeth. Liu Jie took out his cell phone and said to Chu Si, "Then I'll go and ask for the front row tickets now." "I'll go and ask for the front row tickets now." After that, Liu Jie dialed the number. Lin Yuan thought to himself. The S tournament's all-star match was a grand event that could almost catch up with the S tournament finals. There were only 2 days left before the start of the all-star match. Liu Jie could easily get the front row tickets with just one phone call. This made Lin Yuan feel that it was easier to do things with someone around. Soon, Liu Jie hung up with a strange expression and said to everyone, "I've already gotten the front row tickets for the S tournament. I've already prepared the front row tickets for the S tournament. There are a total of 10 tickets. When the time comes, all of us can sit together." While speaking, Liu Jie was still thinking about how depressed by how sounded on the phone. Is he really depressed? It's almost the new year, so why does he still sound like he's half dead? Does that live streamer called Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess really have that much magic? After disappearing for so long, she still made by how think about her day and night. As long as he had a little extra Radiance dollars, he would send all of them to the empty live streaming room of the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess. Liu Jie was a little puzzled. How did that damned Sunder by how become such a bootlicker? The Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess's recent disappearances were already faintly comparable to the news of the Radiance 100 sequence members. For example, Zhao Chun's popularity of eating at the royal capital's last buffet restaurant was ranked below the popularity of the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess's disappearance. In Liu Jie's opinion, perhaps the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess's disappearance for a long time was a good thing for Bai Hao. After a long time, Bai Hao might be able to walk out of his current half-dead state. At the side, Hu Quan was commanding the fantasy breed wood weaving house centipede to devour a completely jade-textured chicken wing wood and spit out completely jade-textured silk threads with wing patterns. However, Hu Quan's attention was always on Lin Yuan's side. Looking at the interaction between Lin Yuan and Chu Si, Hu Quan could not help but sigh. Others might not know, but Hu Quan knew how many things he had created in order to complete Lin Yuan's idea of the private faction territory's interior. He had just finished making these things and showed them to Lin Yuan. He decided to announce his role as a Star Web private faction to the other rising and veteran factions on the 3rd. It was equivalent to opening up the Star Web territory to other factions. Therefore, before that, Lin Yuan had to at least set up the territory's interior. In addition, he still needed to prepare those phase for the territory's internal affairs. In Hu Quan's opinion, such a task was not easy. Under such circumstances, Lin Yuan was still willing to take out a day to watch the all-star match with Chu Ci. It was enough to show how much he cared about her. In the eyes of an old-fashioned man like Hu Quan, caring about a person didn't mean that one had to appear good to that person on the surface. Instead, he was willing to unconditionally take out a lot of time to accompany her when he was clearly very busy. Hu Quan used his hand to flick the wood-weaving house centipede's carapace to stop it from slacking off and continue working. He then summoned the vitality sloth that he had just contracted not too long ago. After being summoned by Hu Quan, the vitality sloth was still a little dazed. It extended its big claws to hug Hu Quan's neck and put its head on Hu Quan's shoulder like a wife, looking a little delicate and timid in the eyes of outsiders. However, the vitality sloth was just too lazy. It closed its eyes and wanted to find a comfortable position to continue sleeping. Hu Quan carried the vitality sloth to the water rhinoceros leather sofa and sat down. The weight of Hu Quan and the vitality sloth pressed a big hole in the water rhinoceros leather sofa. Everyone looked at Hu Quan and was immediately stunned by his and the vitality sloth's posture. What kind of sweet posture is this? Wen Yu glanced at Hu Quan suspiciously and thought to herself in surprise. Hu Quan is an uncle who usually does handicrafts. Could it be that there's something wrong with his view of love after staying here for too long? That's not right either. Hu Quan seems to read a book usually too. Wen Yu felt that she should find a chance to see what kind of book Hu Quan was reading. Hu Quan reached out and patted the vitality sloth like he was coaxing a child. Pride of laziness cast primordial energy flow on the big brother sitting there holding the teacup. Lin Yuan had just picked up the teacup and was drinking Wen Yu's newly brewed Three Treasures tea. However, he suddenly felt a stream of air hit his body, making him full of energy. It was as if he had infinite energy and did not need to sleep at all tonight. Lin Yuan looked up at Hu Quan, only to see the latter winking at him. Kid, with energy, you won't feel overwhelmed when you're busy at night. As soon as Hu Quan finished speaking, everyone fell silent except for Chu Ci. The way they looked at Hu Quan became increasingly strange. Only Chu Ci was a little puzzled by everyone's reaction. She did not understand why everyone was looking at the simple and honest uncle who with such gazes. Hu Quan thought to himself, pride of laziness has cast primordial energy flow. Lin Yuan definitely won't feel sleepy tonight after being cast by his pride of laziness. Furthermore, he won't understand that he won't be energetic in the morning even if he stays up late at night. This way, Lin Yuan can use the time he has to do on Tuesday tonight. At that moment, Hu Quan was still a little reluctant. The vitality sloth's recovery of the contractor's primordial energy was only enough. Only by being busy for a while and taking a nap could he accumulate a little bit of primordial energy. However, when the vitality sloth restored primordial energy to people other than the contractor, it would cause double the consumption. The vitality sloth used up all the primordial energy it had accumulated in the past half a month when it released this primordial energy flow. Hu Quan scratched his head and thought. It seemed that he should also think of a way to increase the vitality sloth's grade. Otherwise, the current silver vitality sloth was really not enough. Even if he did not care about others and only restored his primordial energy, as long as he looked at the notebook, he would still need to sleep at night. However, if the vitality sloth could reach platinum, it should not have this concern. His Class 5 Spirit Craftsman title had not been decided yet. Why don't I paddle happy Hu Quan? At that moment, the holy sword-hugging queen's ethereal voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Master, what do you think of the name Pride of Laziness? Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 577. Lin Yuan was cursing the vitality sloth's name in his heart. Upon hearing the sacred sword-hugging queen's question, Lin Yuan answered without even thinking. Isn't this name a bit too Chunibya? How is it as nice as your name, Black Pill? The sacred sword-hugging queen originally wanted to seriously discuss the naming issue with Lin Yuan. However, after hearing Lin Yuan's words, the sacred sword-hugging princess immediately did not dare to discuss the name with Lin Yuan anymore. Instead, in the depths of Lin Yuan's soul, she shook her new dress aggrievedly. What if his contestant thought of something strange in the process of their conversation? Then he might have to change his name again. He felt the abundant energy in his body as if he had slept soundly for 2 nights. Lin Yuan praised Hu Quan's contracted vitality sloth in his heart. When Hu Quan saw the way Lin Yuan was looking at his vitality sloth, he hugged the snoring vitality sloth with force and said warily, "Don't worry. You are a creation master. You should know how difficult it is for the vitality sloth to inject vitality flow. Don't even think about doing anything to my big baby sloth in the future." He had originally planned to stay up all night and then take the ingredients he and Liu Jie had chosen together to the Leaning Moon Mountain the next morning. Lin Yuan was originally afraid that he would be rather sleepy the next morning after working hard all night. Now that he had Hu Quan's assistance, he did not need to worry that he would be out of energy tomorrow. Listen and Zhu Luo only returned after 11 o'clock in the evening. After Listen and Zhu Luo sat down and drank a cup of tea, Listen said to Zhu Luo, "Young master, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce has consumed a lot of resources sold by the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce. I've only asked Fei Qianqiong to sell some relatively inferior resources that we would lose money over to other forces. After selling these resources, the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce has begun to transform into luxury resources. It's just that the third lineage of the Zheng family that the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce relies on has recently stopped pouring resources into the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce. I heard that Fei Qianqiong, Bai Chengxiong, and Bai Chenghu are very worried. Bai Chenghu has already headed to Indigo Azure City to take the initiative to contact the third lineage of the Zheng family. Bai Chenghu handed the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce to Bai Chengxiong to manage, but Bai Chengxiong is addicted to wine and pleasure and does not have his mind on the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce. Fei Qianqiong is handling most of the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce's matters. After listening to Listen's report, Lin Yuan did not express his opinion but spoke to Listen. "Just do it according to your ideas." Lin Yuan did not want to ask. "Of Lin," he said. He had just heard when you talk about the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's recent struggle with the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce. With the help of Fei Qianqiong, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce was constantly nibbling away at the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce's foundation. Listen's talent. S. Lin Yuan was Lin. Lin Listen S. Li Listening Lin has listening to long had Listen. Listen Lin Yuan heard said. After the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce absorbed the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's creation master resources and then gave them to the Zheng family's third lineage, Listen had suspected that his elder's death was not an accident. Lin Liang, Lin, G. As, Lin, was. Bai. Listen was sure that everything that had happened to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce was related to the Zheng family. Understanding the truth had solved Listen's doubts and not. After the doubts and not disappeared, Listen only had hatred for the Zheng family. "Young master, I have been secretly developing the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce because you have been asleep. I haven't sold the items mixed with the completely jade-textured wood powder. There is a lot of backlog now. I think it's time to take out these items mixed with the completely jade-textured wood powder. It's just that I don't think we can maximize profits if we sell these luxury items as goods. Therefore, I want to sell these items in the form of an auction." Listen's current idea was largely inspired by Lin Yuan's auction of the Heavenly Maiden grade elemental pearls in the Star Web store. He found that the pearls, which did not have much effect, could raise the price of Heavenly Maiden grade elemental pearls just because they were rare and beautiful. Moreover, the bidding during the auction was indeed very easy to get people excited. Therefore, Listen wanted to make a brand out of the large number of luxury items that the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had saved. He would then obtain the highest profits through exquisite packaging and auctions. Upon hearing Listen's words, Lin Yuan pondered for a moment before replying. "Since you want to do it in the form of an auction, I wonder if you intend to build a physical auction house for the auction or enter the school on the Star Web." Listen clearly had his own clear ideas. "I plan to conduct the auction on Star Web in the form of a live broadcast room. There will be live streamers showing and explaining every luxury item that will be auctioned every 24 hours. The crafting pavilion has been set up by Uncle Hu. The shapes and carvings of every object made by the Class 3 spirit craftsman in the crafting pavilion are unique. Therefore, compared to bulk sales, this kind of unique luxury item can only be sold at a higher price in the eyes of people who are fated with it. In the beginning, this method might be a little slower. Before the live broadcast room becomes famous, the auction price might not reach expectations due to the lack of people. However, as long as we maintain the live broadcast room for a period of time, I believe that it will definitely develop greatly. I've also found a shop in the Royal Capital's bustling district offline. I can pick out some of the precious luxury items and auction them under the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's and the Engineering Pavilion's names. As soon as Listen finished speaking, Hu Quan's eyes lit up. Although Hu Quan had only established the Engineering Pavilion to serve Lin Yuan, he was still very willing if he could make a name for himself. Otherwise, Hu Quan would not have had the idea of establishing the Engineering Pavilion at that time. Hu Quan had also carefully thought about how to make the Engineering Pavilion famous. However, Hu Quan's brain was only suitable for some craftsmanship and lacked a lot of other aspects. Now, Listen's idea was equivalent to directly helping Hu Quan solve this problem. The Engineering Pavilion only needed to continuously produce luxury items, and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce would take care of everything else. Lin Yuan did not expect Listen's ambition to be so big that he actually wanted both. However, be it the live broadcast auction on StarWeb or the auctions in the offline auction house, there were not many items that could hold down the scene. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 578. The completely jade-textured wood in Lin Yuan's spirit lock spatial zone was still constantly maturing. Almost all of the furniture in the manor's main residence was made of jade-textured wood, and every piece was of high quality. Therefore, there was no need for him to keep the matured completely jade-textured wood in the spirit lock spatial zone for the mansion's construction. This also made the completely jade-textured wood something that he could use to exchange for resources. He waved his hand, and 10 huge, completely jade-textured wooden boards appeared at his feet. Lin Yuan said to Listen. Since you're going to hold an online and offline auction, I'll take out some good materials and get Uncle Hu to make some good stuff for you. After saying that, Lin Yuan took out a handful of Heavenly Maiden grade elemental pearls with the Cloud Dream Lake Pearls essence and said to Hu Quan, Uncle Hu, what's the effect of embedding your Heavenly Maiden level elemental pearls into objects made of completely jade-textured wood? Even though Hu Quan had gotten used to using completely jade-textured wood to make objects, he was still able to use it. However, Hu Quan could not help but narrow his eyes at the sight of so many completely jade-textured wood glowing with a jade-like luster. However, when she saw the Heavenly Maiden grade elemental pearls in Lin Yuan's hand, she was stunned. Hu Quan could not help but want to ask Lin Yuan if he was born in a golden nest and how he could take out so many good things. How can an old man like me control myself when you're like this? When Hu Quan saw the rare spiritual materials, his spirit craftsman's soul trembled with excitement. At the same time, many design ideas appeared in his mind. He hurriedly said, Even if you find a random person to press elemental pearls into a sculpture made of completely jade-textured wood, people will still want to buy it. Max out the luxury effect. But you can rest assured with the elemental pearls and completely jade-textured wood in my hands. My craftsmanship is definitely worthy of this appalling luxury. Many question marks appeared on Listen's head. In order to reach an agreement with Lin Yuan and make the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce a rising faction, he had come up with the idea of selling objects made of completely jade-textured wood powder. But why did Lin Yuan suddenly give him such a precious thing that could suppress the situation after he came up with the idea? If he really had a completely jade-textured wood sculpture inlaid with Heavenly Maiden-level elemental pearls, then why would he have to worry about the early stage of operations and publicity? All of these problems were easily solved. With such a level of suppression, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had imperceptibly risen to the level of a veteran faction. The Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce didn't have anything that could compare to the veteran factions except for these items. But with these items, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce could put on a show that only veteran factions could. Listen had been very busy recently. He was busy recruiting and expanding the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's staff, which had been suppressed by the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce, and he had received the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce's resources. In particular, Listen needed to properly handle the fey-related resources bought from the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce as soon as possible. Listen had not planned on returning to the manor tonight. However, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had received a letter that forced Listen to return to the main residence and tell Lin Yuan about it in person. Listen took out a letter from the Diamond Fey storage box and handed it to Lin Yuan. "Young master, this letter is a little strange. It should be for you. Please take a look at it yourself." Lin Yuan took the letter from Listen's hand with some doubts. He took a look and realized that there were no words on the envelope. Moreover, the letter had already been opened. It was clear that Listen had opened it and read its contents. When he opened the letter and saw the contents, he frowned. There was only one sentence in the letter. In the coastal sea outside Indigo Azure City, Jiao Hansong of the Zheng family's third lineage, and Zheng Kaiyuan of the Night Patrol's sixth lineage. When he saw this message, he pondered for a moment and handed the note in the envelope to Wen Yu. Then he asked Listen, "Do you know who sent this letter?" Listen replied. This letter was found in the body of a silver-ranked messenger pigeon. A silver messenger pigeon landed on a tree in the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's courtyard this evening. It then spat out the note in its body and prepared to fly away. At that time, Brother Ju happened to see this scene, so he caught the silver messenger pigeon. Lin Yuan pondered for a while and had a basic judgment of this matter. The messenger pigeon was a kind of communication fey. Due to the existence of the star web, there were very few opportunities to use this kind of communication fey. Generally, it was only used when sending secret information between factions. The messenger pigeon also had a nickname among the major factions, the anonymous messenger pigeon. The messenger pigeon's communication level was extremely high. As long as it was not the messenger pigeon that took the initiative to spit out the message and someone else wanted to forcefully obtain it, then the messenger pigeon's stomach would wriggle and destroy the message in its abdomen. Lin Yuan deduced that with the messenger pigeon's speed, it would take at least 9 days to fly from Indigo Azure City to the royal capital. Therefore, this letter was written by someone not long after this incident had happened. Since he had revealed his identity to Guard Envoy Sai, he had asked Guard Envoy Sai to keep this matter a secret. As a result, the feud between him and the Zheng family had not spread, and only a few witnesses knew about this matter. These people included the 2 guard envoys, Du and He, and the Indigo Azure Guard captain. Lin Yuan felt that these people would not be so bored to do such a thing. Therefore, only one faction could know so clearly about this matter. Lin Yuan turned to look at Wen Yu. It seems like the Zheng family's interior isn't as clean as it looks on the surface. There are surging undercurrents underneath. Wen Yu spoke softly. "Young master, the contents of this note are basically the same as what I have investigated. Nightmare 6 is indeed part of the Zheng family's night patrol. There are a total of 9 members in the night patrol, and they follow the Zheng family's 3 young masters. This Nightmare 6 is a member of the night patrol who follows the Zheng family's second young master, Zheng Kaiyuan. He can be considered Zheng Kaiyuan's protector. Looking at the handwriting on this note, if the person who wrote this note is the person who wants to tell us the news, then the person who wrote this note should have a very poor constitution. From the tip of the pen, it can be seen that this person's hand doesn't have much strength when writing." Wen Yu then carefully checked the handwriting on the letter again and used her hand to make a few strokes on the paper. She felt that apart from the next stroke, the rest of the strokes were written at a higher position than ordinary people. It was as though the hand was holding something to write. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 579. Lin Yuan did not particularly care about this letter and this slip of paper. He was not interested in knowing who was behind the note. Regardless of whether the owner of this note was an enemy or a friend, the Zheng clan was bound to be an enemy. The owner of this note wouldn't have sent him this message for no reason. If he really had some ulterior motive, he would come looking for him again in the future. All he had to do was deal with the myriad of changes by remaining unchanged. Due to the relationship between the Zheng family and the Zheng family's third lineage, Lin Yuan had not blamed the Zheng family's main family for the third lineage's attack on Listen. However, The second young master of the main branch of the Zheng clan had already sent an emperor realm expert to deal with him. In that case, the enmity between Lin Yuan and the Zheng family's main family would be formed. Lin Yuan would not show any mercy to people or factions that had dispatched emperor-class experts to kill him. Furthermore, he still had Princess waiting for him to use the willpower in the willpower rune and the law in the law crystal to nourish her. Lin Yuan asked Wen Yu, "How much do you know about Zheng Kaiyuan?" Wen Yu thought for a moment and said, "Zheng Kaiyuan is considered a rather special existence in the Zheng family. He is the disciple of the Pinnacle Class 4 Creation Master, Miao Qi. Even though the Pinnacle Class 4 Creation Master Miao Qi doesn't only have one disciple, Zheng Kaiyuan, Miao Qi treats Zheng Kaiyuan with exceptional importance. At the same time, Zheng Kaiyuan's mother, Miao Ji, is also a core member of the top faction, the Miao family. It was because Miao Ji married the current family head of the Zheng family that the Zheng family, which was originally the weakest of the three families in Indigo Azure City, became the true three families today. The Pinnacle Class 4 Creation Master Miao Qi and Zheng Kaiyuan's mother are siblings. Apart from addressing Miao Qi as teacher, Zheng Kaiyuan can also address Miao Qi as aunt. When Lin Yuan heard her words, his fingers gently tapped on the water rhinoceros leather sofa. Zheng Kaiyuan actually involved a top force. Speaking of top-notch forces, they were a whole level higher than the veteran forces. It could be considered a true colossus. For example, the Gao family that Gao Feng belonged to had only gained the recognition of other top-notch forces a few years ago after developing the deep-sea resources, rising from an established force to a top-notch force. The Miao family had been a top-tier force for nearly 30 years, and it was obvious that they had a much richer foundation than the Gao family. The Zheng family's second young master, Zheng Kaiyuan, actually had the Miao family's background. Compared to the other veteran forces' descendants, he could be considered a noble son. I remember there are 3 direct descendants of the main family of the Zheng family. Since Zheng Kaiyuan is a rather special existence in the Zheng family, then the other 2, upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Wen Yu suddenly thought of this period of time after knowing that something had happened to him. When he was flipping through the records of the Zheng clan's master in the Hidden Moon Pavilion, he found some clues. His eyes lit up. The Zheng family's first young master is the son of the previous Zheng family head, who is the current Zheng family head's elder brother, before Miao Ji married the current Zheng family head. He is extremely talented in combat and is highly regarded by the Zheng family head. The Zheng Miao family's Miao is not his mother, but his not Miao family's mother. It's said that third young master Zheng's mother died after giving birth to third young master Zheng. Third young master Zheng wasn't born with a disability when he was young. It's just that no one knows why he's been sitting in a wheelchair all this time. Young master, do you think the words on this note were written by the Zheng family's third young master? After saying that, Wen Yu stuck out her tongue awkwardly, feeling that her judgment was too arbitrary. How could she guess based on the handwriting alone? Lin Yuan listened to Wen Yu's introduction of the Zheng family's 3 direct descendants and clicked his tongue. The relationship between the members of such wealthy families was really complicated. Lin Yuan had poured so many precious luxury resources into Listen because he had plans to attack the Zheng family in business. The Zheng family, a veteran faction, mainly operated in the direction of luxury resources. Although Lin Yuan did not care about the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's daily operations, he had decided with Listen on the business direction of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. No matter how rich the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce was, it still had to penetrate the Zheng family's business empire bit by bit through the medium of the Iron Wall Association. As for the Miao family, Lin Yuan already had a good idea. If Sky City wanted to develop, it would always have to offend the veteran and top factions in the process. The Zheng family would not be the first veteran faction. If the Miao family made a move on his side, it would not be the first top faction. No matter what, the vengeance that should be avenged must be avenged. When you have time, help me investigate an Emperor-class expert called Duan He. Upon hearing that, Wen Yu took note of Lin Yuan's request seriously. After talking about business, Lin Yuan found that Chu Si had fallen asleep on the sofa. Lin Yuan picked up Chu Si as he had done when she was young and carried her to her room in the mansion. He put her on the bed, took off the slippers, and gently covered her with the quilt. Just as Lin Yuan was about to go out, he suddenly remembered that Chu Si had the habit of waking up at night and had always been afraid of the dark. Lin Yuan took out a 5-fortune ranchu from the spirit lock spatial zone, placed it in a porcelain basin, and placed it on the head of Chu Si's bed. The black-back mountain boar ornament, which was made of completely jade-textured wood, lit up after coming into contact with the spirit chi released by the spirit siphon goldfish. Under the illumination of this jade-textured luster, Chu Si slept soundly with a blissful smile hanging on the corner of her mouth. After sending Chu Si back to her room, Lin Yuan also started to work hard. The mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer also returned to their rooms to work hard to improve their strength. Liu Jie went to the training room to familiarize himself with the transformed insect queen through actual combat. Lin Yuan logged into Star Web and started to sweep through the rare lifeform pavilion in order to build the internal environment of Star Web's private faction territory. Lin Yuan's goal was very clear. He searched for the two-plant phase, the starlight grass and the floating cloud flower. The starlight grass and the floating cloud flower belonged to the more expensive plant phase. Even though they did not have any specific use, just their appearance was enough to sell for a high price. Lin Yuan tried to choose the floating cloud flowers and starlight grasses of higher quality. In the end, he bought 36 bronze elite floating cloud flowers and 108 bronze elite starlight grasses. It was not that there were no bronze flawless floating cloud flowers and starlight grasses. However, Lin Yuan felt that it was too much of a loss to buy the bronze flawless floating cloud flowers and starlight grasses. Just a small difference in quality, and the price had increased by more than 20 times. Of course, among these elite floating cloud flowers and starlight grasses, Lin Yuan also tried to choose the high-grade bronze ones. After a round of selection, none of them were lower than bronze 7. First update, seeking recommendation votes and monthly votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 580. After buying these floating cloud flowers and starlight herbs, he had purchased all the phase needed to build his private territory. However, he planned to continue looking and see if he could find a suitable fae for Zhu Luo's third willpower rune. While searching, Lin Yuan thought that Zhu Luo's luck was really good. He had actually discovered a mud lizard. The willpower contained in Zhu Luo's third willpower rune was compatible with this mud lizard. Furthermore, the rotten mud lizard was an earth-poison dual elemental fae that had mutated from the mud lizard and was very rare. It was one of those faes that could only be found after passing this village. The rotten mud lizard was a fae with the earth and poison attributes, and its poison damage could enhance Zhu Luo's pitiful attack methods. The rotten mud lizard didn't have a dragon species fae bloodline and couldn't evolve into a dragon species fae. However, in the process of evolution, the mud lizard had a certain chance of elementalizing its body. In terms of evolution, the mud lizard wasn't inferior to a dragon species fae. When he had fought in the Star Web promotion duels, the Dragon Gate Guild Club member Chen Hongfeng's main fae had been a gold huge-tailed swamp lizard. However, Chen Hongfeng's giant-tailed swamp lizard had evolved from a swamp lizard, not a rotten swamp lizard. Otherwise, Chen Hongfeng's actual combat ability would have increased by another level. The mud lizard had been hanging on the rare lifeform pavilion for a whole day. The Star Web's rare lifeform pavilion had plenty of people who made a living by sweeping items and reselling some phase and spiritual materials to earn profits. The mud lizard had been hanging there for a day. Logically speaking, it should have been swept away by someone. However, this mud lizard was an exception. This was because the fixed price set by the mud lizard was not radiance dollars. Instead, it was a relatively unorthodox spiritual material, sea willow branch, which required 50 kilograms. This made it impossible for the people who made a living by sweeping up goods on the Star Web to earn a living from the price difference to buy this mud lizard. After all, he couldn't go and find another 25 kilograms of sea willow branch just for this mud lizard. If the mud lizard was swept away by someone else when he returned, wouldn't the sea willow branch end up in his hands? For a spirit material like the sea willow branch that no one wanted, it would be impossible for him to live on after it had fallen into his hands. Without hesitation, Lin Yuan made a deal with a fixed price. Previously, Lin Yuan would have to search for the sea willow branch that this person had requested to trade. However, during the group welfare auction, Master Duan Li had used a fortune-dripping sea willow as a bargaining chip. He only needed to cut the fortune-drop sea willow's head in a while, and he would have the 25 catty sea willow branches. After the transaction, he logged off Star Web and sat in his room, preparing to read for a while waiting for Ostrich Logistics to deliver the supplies he had purchased. At that moment, Lin Yuan's phone rang. Lin Yuan took a look and realized that the person calling him was Gao Feng. Lin Yuan could not help but think to himself. He had just finalized the deal with Gao Feng today. Could something have happened to Gao Feng? When Lin Yuan picked up Gao Feng's call, he heard Gao Feng's exasperated roar. Lin Yuan, you're really pissing me off. When Lin Yuan heard Gao Feng's angry roar, he was a little confused. Why was he so angry at night? Could it be that Gao Feng found out that his surname wasn't actually Gao, and that he wasn't a core disciple of the Gao family? Before Lin Yuan could ask what was wrong with Gao Feng, he heard Gao Feng's words pour out like beans from a bamboo tube. Lin Yuan, let me tell you, I, Gao Feng, have never been bullied like this since I was young. Damn the aquarium of bliss, I only asked a few questions. How dare these people? When Lin Yuan heard Gao Feng's words, his expression suddenly became strange. He seemed to know why Gao Feng was suddenly so angry. Why did you go to the aquarium of bliss in the middle of the night? When Lin Yuan said this, he heard the sound of teeth grinding from the other end of the phone. Gao Feng didn't answer Lin Yuan's question. Instead, he gave an irrelevant answer. Instead, he said, Lin Yuan, didn't you ask me what was my goal in establishing the marine fei breeding base? I didn't think about it before, but I have now. I want to F***CK up the aquarium of bliss. The exasperated Gao Feng was about to continue scolding the aquarium of bliss for a minute when he heard Lin Yuan's indifferent voice. Were you kicked out of Star Web's private territory by the aquarium of bliss? When Gao Feng heard that, he felt a chill on his back and asked in surprise. Are you a fortune teller? This has only happened for less than 10 minutes. How did you know? Lin Yuan secretly raised his brows. He had guessed correctly. The Gao family was a top-tier force, and they were also developing resources in the deep sea. They were the target of the Blissful Sea Clan, a veteran force. If Gao Feng visited the Blissful Sea Tribe as the only direct descendant of the Gao family, he would definitely be treated as a VIP by the Blissful Sea Tribe. The only people in the Blissful Sea Tribe that could make Lin Yuan think of provoking Gao Feng were the attendants in Star Web's private faction territories, who would kick people whenever they wanted. When Lin Yuan thought about how Gao Feng was complaining to him in the middle of the night, he felt that he had to comfort Gao Feng. Therefore, Lin Yuan said, that's right. I've also been kicked out by the Blissful Oceanic Clan. Now, I can't even enter their Star Web private territory. Just as Lin Yuan finished speaking, he suddenly heard Gao Feng go silent for a long time before he started to laugh non-stop. When Lin Yuan heard that, countless black lines immediately appeared on his forehead. Is it so funny? Then, Lin Yuan listened to Gao Feng rambling about the marine fei breeding base's planning and the direction of the marine fei breeding. As he listened, Lin Yuan sighed silently. Gao Feng was indeed a core descendant of a top-tier faction. Gao Feng's ability wasn't inferior to Gao Feng's status. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly heard a delicate yell from Gao Feng's phone. Gao Feng, you damn brat. Didn't you promise me to sleep before midnight every day? It's already past 2, and you're still not sleeping? It's the new year, and you're still making me angry. Aren't you going to wake up that damn pig father of yours and let him teach you when to sleep? After this delicate yell, Lin Yuan heard Gao Feng say softly with some embarrassment, "Good night, brother. If there's anything, we'll talk tomorrow." After speaking, Gao Feng hung up the phone. Lin Yuan clicked his tongue. Gao Feng's upbringing was too strict. Suddenly, Lin Yuan recalled that Gao Feng had mentioned that it was already past 2 in the morning. Lin Yuan lowered his head to look at the time on his phone, and he couldn't help but feel his scalp go numb. It was simply horrifying, and he actually accompanied a man on the phone for 2 hours. What is going on? In less than 20 minutes, Ostrich Logistics had delivered all the items that Lin Yuan had bought on StarWeb. Lin Yuan took the items and headed straight for the Spirit Lock spatial zone. However, as soon as Lin Yuan entered the Spirit Lock spatial zone, he noticed that the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree was burning with a resplendent reddish-gold flame. A cry that was like a celestial tune echoed throughout the entire Spirit Lock spatial zone. Second, more requesting monthly votes and recommendation votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 581. When Lin Yuan heard this fairy-like cry, he immediately looked at the golden nest formed by the phoenix perching parasol tree's branches. The golden bird's nest formed by the branches of the phoenix perching parasol tree seemed to be brewing a gorgeous sunrise. The moment the resplendent light rose like a sunrise, it covered the bright reddish-gold flames burning among the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's branches and leaves. A cat with 3 tails was squatting beside the snow-white Elysium pureland. Wagging its tail, it looked expectantly at the sunrise that was about to rise above the nest. Her face was filled with happiness from the bottom of her heart. At this time, the kitten with 3 tails twitched its ears, sensing that someone had appeared behind it. She immediately turned around and started running. In just a few steps, she had scurried into Lin Yuan's embrace and spoke in a childish voice. "Yuan, Chimey is about to wake up." When Lin Yuan heard Genius' childish voice that was filled with happiness and anticipation, he placed Genius on his shoulder. He rubbed his clever little head and said, "When Chimey wakes up this time, it will undergo the most thorough transformation in its evolution." As he spoke, he looked in the direction of the golden nest. He discovered that the rising sun-like radiance had covered his vision, making it impossible for him to see Chimey's figure within the radiance. Chimey's grade was about to advance to Fantasy 3. Apart from anticipation, Lin Yuan was more worried. In essence, Chimey was a sound bird that couldn't even be considered a fae. Chimey had received Lin Yuan's ability, and its body had been injected with a huge amount of pure spirit qi to evolve. This meant that every step that Chimey took was pioneering the sound bird's lineage. Every step he took was an exploration in the epic of life that was filled with thorns and obstacles. For an existence like Chimey that had evolved step by step from a low-level life form, it was extremely difficult for it to raise its quality from a fantasy breed. If he had not coincidentally obtained the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree, which was suitable for Chimey to improve its quality, he would not have been able to do so. Even if he had so many resources in his hands now, he did not dare to guarantee that he could upgrade Chimey to Fantasy 3 at this moment. The phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree could increase the quality of avian fays and purify their bloodline. There was also a certain chance for the avian fays bloodline to mutate toward the Luan phoenix species. This allowed Chimey to use the opportunity of advancing to Fantasy 3 to completely confirm the bloodline in its body. It could be said that this hurdle was indeed the biggest hurdle in Chimey's evolution history. Once they crossed it, they flapped their wings and soared to the 9th heaven. Genius intelligence was extremely high, so it could naturally understand what Lin Yuan was saying. Genius immediately tensed up and asked anxiously, "Lin Yuan, will Chimey be as painful as last time when it evolves?" Genius still remembered the painful cry that Chimey had let out when it was evolving into a twilight starbird after advancing to a fantasy breed. Since Lin Yuan said that this was the greatest metamorphosis in Chimey's evolution, Genius was very worried about Chimey. Lin Yuan said hurriedly, "Chimey's evolution process might be very painful, but the possibility of an accident happening is very small. It is very rare for a fantasy breed fae to evolve its bloodline and increase its quality. After a fae becomes a myth breed, it will need to undergo the world cleansing every time it increases its quality and face the danger of being annihilated at any moment. Therefore, during the process of reforging its bloodline, Chimey will only have to suffer some pain at most." After hearing Lin Yuan's words, Genius was finally at ease. It lay on Lin Yuan's shoulder and stared at the golden nest without blinking. Lin Yuan couldn't help but lament that Genius and Chimey had a really good relationship. At that moment, the rising sun instantly turned into a ball of dense luster that spread out. Chimey's figure was finally revealed. The cloud patterns on Chimey's azure blue feathers were completely revealed, and even the stars that were faintly discernible in the cloud patterns were flickering intensely. All of a sudden, Chime's cry became abnormally painful, and the pleasant sound was like a cuckoo weeping blood. After the mournful cry, Chime's body was like a small sun that was enveloped by a layer of resplendent sunlight again. However, even though this ball of sunlight was dazzling and covered Chime's figure, it couldn't hide the blood mist that surged out from the sunlight. The blood mist in the sunlight caused Genius to be so worried that its small claw involuntarily popped out. It left a deep mark on Lin Yuan's spirit chi clothes on his shoulder. Lin Yuan's heart tightened, but he didn't have the slightest idea. Lin Yuan knew that everything that was happening to Chime was a necessary process for its bloodline to evolve. It was just like how Genius Foundation was just 100 questions beast. In the future, when Genius evolved into a fantasy breed or even fantasy 3, it would have to go through the same process as Chime. The layer of resplendent sunlight that enveloped Chime looked abnormally beautiful with the contrast of the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's golden leaves. However, Chime's mournful cry didn't stop for a moment. Lin Yuan keenly noticed that Chime's mournful cry suddenly carried a trace of special pressure. This pressure was similar to the one that Blackie had emitted when it had awakened its flood dragon species bloodline. However, the lingering charm of the pressure was very different. At the same time, the pressure that Chime emitted was much purer than the pressure that Blackie had emitted. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up as he immediately thought that this should be because Chime had been perching on the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree. The Luan phoenix species bloodline in its body had awakened. An avian fae awakening the Luan phoenix species bloodline in its body could be said to be a great opportunity. It was just like how a fish fae had a chance to awaken a flood dragon species bloodline under certain circumstances. If a flood dragon species fae evolved again, there was a trace of a chance that its bloodline would evolve into a main dragon species. If the Luan phoenix species bloodline evolved again, it might evolve into a main phoenix species. Just as Lin Yuan thought that Chime was about to awaken the Luan phoenix species bloodline in its body and complete its evolution, something unexpected happened. All of a sudden, something unexpected happened. As Chime wailed in pain, the pressure and charm it emitted changed. A kind of bloodline lingering charm that belonged to Chime burst out from its body. The lingering charm of Chime's bloodline appeared very weak under the pressure of the Luan phoenix species bloodline. However, under Chime's will, this bloodline that belonged to Chime refused to be devoured by the Luan phoenix species bloodline. Instead, it used the power of a sparrow to clash with the Luan phoenix species bloodline. Lin Yuan immediately understood Chime's intention. Chime wanted to devour and assimilate the Luan phoenix species bloodline that it had obtained from the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree and make it a part of its own bloodline. Upon sensing Chime's persistence and the changes in its body, Lin Yuan immediately thought, "This is bad. I'm begging for monthly votes and recommendation votes." End of this chapter. Chapter 582. Chime was using its will to change the evolution of the bloodline in its body. To a large extent, it was equivalent to interfering with its own evolution. In the ball of light that wrapped around Chime, Lin Yuan seemed to vaguely see Chime's body being torn and deformed by the Luan Feng bloodline in its body. It was as though it was being kneaded into a twisted meatball. Lin Yuan looked at Chime's body being pulled and twisted into a meatball, and his heart suddenly tightened. His thoughts froze all of a sudden. Given Chime's current physical condition, it should have long lost consciousness due to the intense pain. What was happening now was that Chime's subconscious was leading the sound bird bloodline in its body to devour the Luan Feng bloodline. Lin Yuan suddenly remembered that when Chime had just evolved into a meteor bird in the Xia region's face store, it had been standing on his ear and chirping. Although ordinary people could not understand Chime's chirping, Lin Yuan and Chime were connected by a contract, so he could understand the meaning it had conveyed at that time. "Lin Yuan, look at my piercing voice. Chime's singing has become better, and it can even protect Lin Yuan and Genius." Lin Yuan did not take the meaning of Chime's chirping to heart. After all, he had not been sure if he could become a combat-class spirit chi professional. However, as early as when Chime had evolved into a twilight starbird, Lin Yuan had found that Chime had been very stubborn about the unorthodox sound type in its soundbird bloodline. Otherwise, when Chime had evolved into a fantasy breed, it would have completely transformed into a light-type fae. It would not have preserved the sound type in its body and become a sound and light type Fae. Chime's stubbornness had been preserved until now when it came to the choice of bloodline. It still stubbornly chose to choose the sound bird bloodline that originally existed in its body. In order to preserve the sound bird bloodline, it had frantically chosen to use the sound bird bloodline to devour the Luanfeng bloodline. In the face of Chime's stubbornness, Lin Yuan could only support it as a contractor. Lin Yuan had always treated Chime as his Fae but as his family. Therefore, during the evolution process, Lin Yuan could not use his contractor identity to change Chime's subconscious choice. Otherwise, he could circulate his spiritual power as a contractor and order Chime, which was subconsciously, to stop the sound bird bloodline from devouring the Luanfeng bloodline. Instead, it guided the Luanfeng's bloodline to devour the sound bird's bloodline in order to successfully complete its evolution. Lin Yuan anxiously waved his hand and activated the Pure Land of Bliss in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. The white gravel glowed with a sheep-fat jade-like luster, and a bright luster gushed out from between the gravel. These lustrous lusters were like pure white fireflies that flew out from the Pure Land of Bliss. They constantly gathered at the light blob that Chime had evolved into. It was to nourish and repair Chime's body, which had been kneaded into a meatball. However, even with the Pure Land of Paradise's ability to recover damaged origins, it could only ensure that Chime's body wouldn't be torn into pieces by the intense resistance from the Luanfeng bloodline. However, it could not completely heal Chime. Genius had already leaped from Lin Yuan's shoulder to the ground. It looked at Chime, who was inside the sphere of light, with concern. Its blue eyes were already bloodshot and red. Genius wanted to ask Lin Yuan about Chime's situation several times, but it saw that Lin Yuan was activating the Pure Land of Bliss to heal Chime. Genius didn't dare to ask Lin Yuan as it was afraid that Lin Yuan would be distracted. It could only look at Chime inside the sphere of light with bloodshot eyes. Its front paws were placed together as though it was praying that Chime could tide over this crisis. The Pure Land of Paradise's ability to recover damaged origins had been in a stalemate with the Luanfeng bloodline for 15 minutes. Lin Yuan realized that although the Soundbird's bloodline was being forced back by the Luanfeng bloodline at the start, Morbius' exclusive skill, the Pure Land of Paradise, had healed it for a period of time. Chime had subconsciously allowed the Soundbird bloodline in its body to wear down the Luanfeng bloodline. Now, the Soundbird bloodline had actually faintly assimilated a portion of the Luanfeng bloodline. This gave Lin Yuan hope. It seemed that Chime's subconscious intention of letting the Soundbird bloodline devour the Luanfeng bloodline could be realized. Lin Yuan immediately started to rummage through the amber button-shaped diamond Fey storage box for spirit chi crystals. When he had enhanced the Jasmine Lily to Platinum Fantasy 3, there were only 71 spirit power crystals left. Lin Yuan had taken out another spirit chi crystal to help the insect queen recover from its injuries. Thus, before he had fainted in the dimensional rift, he had only been left with 70 spirit chi crystals. In addition, the spirit lock spatial zone had produced 2 new spirit power crystals while he was unconscious. Therefore, Lin Yuan now had a total of 72 spirit chi crystals. He took 20 of the 72 crystals and threw them into the resplendent light sphere that was wrapping around Chime. Since Chime wanted to use its Soundbird bloodline to devour the Luanfeng bloodline, the only possibility was when Chime became a gold fantasy breed. He could only succeed if his body recovered to its peak condition. As the 20 spiritual power crystals were being eroded by the energy in the ball of light, the 20 spiritual power crystals disappeared. The massive and pure spiritual power in the spirit chi crystal erupted and surged into Chime's body, which had been pulled into a meatball by the Luanfeng bloodline. With the infusion of spirit chi from the 20 spiritual power crystals and the Pure Land of Bliss's ability to restore damaged roots, Chime's body instantly glowed with new vitality. Although Chime no longer let out violent cries, it could still be vaguely seen from the ball of light that its body was constantly deforming under the confrontation of the two bloodlines. Time ticked by. Just as Lin Yuan faintly felt that the spiritual power in his body was no longer enough to activate the Pure Land of Bliss and was about to remove the spiritual power imprint on his body, suddenly, an unusually soft and clear sound echoed from the light. Upon hearing this clear sound, Lin Yuan felt as though he was bathing in the clearest sunlight. He saw the endless blue and the gurgling stream not far away. The breeze, the flowing clouds, the water droplets, the grass, and the morning dew that was just about to disperse. The purest and most beautiful sounds in nature were fused together at this moment. They were not even 1/10 as pleasant as this clear sound. Accompanied by this clear sound, the leaves of the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree, which preserved hundreds of mid-grade strange flames, flashed in an instant. The mid-grade strange flames sealed in each leaf had different characteristics, which determined the color of the flames. The hundreds of different colored flames seemed to turn the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree into a golden immortal tree under the seven-colored aurora. Just as this resplendent sunlight merged with the aurora-like halos emitted by the hundreds of mid-grade strange flames, wings that were more dazzling than auroras flapped in the ball of light. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 583. Once again, Lin Yuan was shocked by the miraculous life epic during the phase evolution process. Chimus' body, which had been pulled into a meatball in the ball of light, had once again turned into a blue bird. This time, the feathers on Chimus' head might not have grown much longer, but they were more curly than before. Chimus' feathers had also become even more azure. If the blue color of Chimus' feathers had been the purest blue color in nature, however, Lin Yuan could no longer find any words to describe the blue color of Chimus' feathers now. It was because the blue color of Chimus' feathers seemed to come from the deepest part of one's soul. It was as though the blue color came from the deepest part of one's soul. However, after looking at Chimus' evolved appearance, Lin Yuan could not help but raise his brows. Since when did Chimie evolve so plainly? Just as this thought appeared in Lin Yuan's mind, clouds instantly lingered on Chimus' azure feathers. Another clear chirp that was like the moistening of spring rain echoed. The feathers also changed from azure to gilded due to Chimus' chirp. The gilded color was like the radiance of the warm sun in the middle of the night. At that moment, a few purer golden-veined patterns appeared on the feathers on Chimus' back as compared to the other gilded feathers. It was as if these lines were the warm sun of the 3/9 scorching suns themselves. When Chimie flapped its wings, the golden patterns on its back were like suns. It was as though a rising sun was about to rise above the cloud patterns on Chimus' wings. At the same time, Chimus' sparrow-shaped tail changed shape. Chimus' body was originally half the size of a palm, but its suddenly lengthened tail was already as long as Lin Yuan's arm. Chimus' short sparrow-shaped tail turned into 8 elegant tail feathers. Each tail feather was the same color as its wings and was covered with gorgeous cloud patterns. The ends of the tail feathers were dotted with star imprints, and when they fluttered, it was as though they were dragging a galaxy across the starry sky. Upon seeing this scene, Lin Yuan was certain that Chimie had used its sound bird bloodline to completely devour the Luanfeng bloodline. Otherwise, Chimie would not be able to maintain the appearance of a blue bird if it did not circulate its energy. Instead, it should have always looked like this. If Chimie had advanced to a fantasy breed and evolved into a twilight starbird, it would have been like the stars in the clouds appearing at dawn. Now, Chimie could be said to be the sun wheel illuminating the world and overturning the galaxy. He used Morbius True Data to check Chimus' attributes. Fey name, Qingyin Luank, spirit species, Peacock Luan, Fey grade, gold, 110, Fey type, sound light, Fey quality, fantasy II skills sad smiley broken jade sound, fires a gigantic musical note with the sound of jade shattering towards a target. The sound of jade shattering has a certain interference effect. At the same time, after the gigantic musical note is attacked, it will shatter into 10 spiraling sonic spikes. Bathing light, the body is bathed in clear sunlight. The sunlight can quickly recover the life force that the body has expended. Sunlight ray emits all kinds of rays from the sun. The rays will cause negative weakening to the target. At the same time, the sunlight ray can increase the plant phase activity when shining on it. Absolute nirvana light retains only a trace of the body's vitality and seals it in the sun wheel of the wings. The rest of the vitality will be burned into sunlight energy. Before the sunlight energy in the life disappears, the body will be immune to most physical and elemental damage. Exclusive skill sad smiley clear sky, after the crisp chirp of a bird, the clouds will disperse, and the sun will be summoned. The sky will be clear, and the darkness will disperse. Radiant body, rapidly absorb the sun's power. A large amount of sun energy will gather in the body to form the radiant body. He discovered that Chimus level had indeed evolved to Gold Eye Fantasy 3 after he invested 20 Spirit Chi crystals. Chimus name had also evolved from the original Twilight Starbird to Qingyin Luank. The Luan was in front, and the Sparrow was at the back. Chimi had used its Sound Bird Lord bloodline to suppress and devour the extremely noble Luan Phoenix bloodline among avian fays. Not only had Chimi taken a path in evolution that no one had taken before, but even its bloodline had taken a path that no sparrow species fay could take. When Lin Yuan carefully looked at Chimus' abilities, his eyes could not help but widen. He found that after Chimus' bloodline evolution, its abilities had undergone a huge change. He remembered that Chimus' normal ability, Sound Thrust, was to shoot 3 sharp thorns formed by sound at a designated target. Now, Chimus' first ability had become Sound Shattering Strike. Sound Shattering Strike could shoot a huge rune with a jade-shattering sound at a target. This ability itself did not have any highlights, as the huge rune with sound could be easily resisted. However, the effect of Chimus' huge rune with the jade-shattering sound was not to attack but to control. After controlling the huge rune and shattering it, the 10 spiral sound thrusts hidden in the huge rune were the hidden killing intent of the jade-shattering strike. The changes in Chimus' normal ability had already given Lin Yuan a pleasant surprise. However, when he saw the elite ability, Bathing Light, Lin Yuan frowned slightly. Previously, Chimus' elite ability wasn't Bathing Light, but Scattered Light. Chimi could scatter scattered light rays from its body and let the light rays have a burning and controlling effect. Although Scattered Light's burning and control effect wasn't strong, it had indeed increased Chimus' attack methods. Now that Scattered Light had become Bathing Light, its original attack and control ability had become her endurance ability. However, in terms of recovery ability, Lin Yuan was a healing-type Spirit Chi professional. Now, Lin Yuan's healing-type Fae, the Jasmine Lily, had reached Platinum Fantasy 3. Although the Jasmine Lily was becoming more and more unorthodox on the healing-type Fae path, it was still considered Lin Yuan's strongest Fae. However, it had to be said that the Jasmine Lily was now Lin Yuan's strongest Fae. The Jasmine Lily was enough for Lin Yuan to effectively heal most of his Fays. As for the silver ability, Sunlight Ray, it was not much different from before. However, there was a new sunlight ray behind the Sunlight Ray. When it shone on a plant Fae, it could increase the plant Fae's activity. When he saw this ability, he immediately thought of his contracted Red Thorn. Not only Red Thorn, but even the sea of flowers that Red Thorn spawned were also plant Faes. Increasing the plant Fae's activity was equivalent to increasing the plant Fae's regeneration ability. This could also have a good linkage with the sea of flowers that Red Thorn spawned. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 584. When Chimi used Sunlight Ray to attack an enemy unit, if there was a sea of flowers spread out by Red Thorn beside the enemy unit, then, the Sea of Flowers' overall combat ability would also increase under the effect of Sunlight Ray's increased activity. When Lin Yuan checked Chimus' new Gold Fantasy breed ability, Nirvana Light, Lin Yuan subconsciously patted his forehead with his hand. He glanced at Chimi, which was flying toward him happily and was about to land on his ear, and shook his head helplessly. It was fine that Chimi stubbornly insisted on the Sound Bird bloodline during the evolution process, but when did it become so reckless? Nirvana Light could burn all the vitality in the body into sunlight energy, which was equivalent to providing Chimi with a means to exchange vitality for explosive damage. When used together with the exclusive skill, Radiant Body, it could burst out with a multiplied attack effect. In addition, before the sunlight energy in Nirvana Light disappeared, Chimi could be immune to most physical and elemental damage. This allowed Chimi to use Nirvana Light and enter Radiant Body, greatly increasing its defensive ability. This allowed Chimi to ignore the enemy's damage, to display the greatest attack effect. Of course, Nirvana Light's damage immunity did not include spiritual damage and poison-type abilities. However, it was enough to be immune to most physical and elemental damage. After seeing Nirvana Light, Lin Yuan suddenly felt that Bathing Light, which he had previously thought was useless, did not seem so useless anymore. Bathing light could make up for nirvana light and squeeze out Chimus vitality to the last trace. Together with the jasmine lily's healing ability, it could increase Chimus recovery speed. It was also very likely to allow Chimey to carry out a second wave of attacks in a match. As for Chimus' exclusive skill, Radiant Body, there was no change. However, Clear Sky had changed a lot in Lin Yuan's opinion. Previously, the exclusive skill, Clear Sky, was nothing more than making the dark clouds retreat and the sky clear, which had a strong restraining effect on water-type attacks. But now, apart from making the sky clear, it could also summon the morning sun. When it was a silver fantasy breed, Clear Sky would only let the sky reveal the light of stars at night. Now that Chimey used Clear Sky, it could let the sky bloom with sunlight. Even if Chimey fought at night, bathing light could still be used. At the same time, he secretly thought that Chimus' exclusive skill, Clear Sky, seemed to have become somewhat special after its evolution. True data showed that the exclusive skill, Clear Sky, could summon the morning sun, but it was naturally impossible for Chimey, a gold fantasy breed. At present, the best Chimey could do was to summon sunlight at night. However, if Chimey became a myth breed, it would be able to use its exclusive skill, Clear Sky. Could he summon the sun at night and turn night into day? As for Clear Sky's new effect, Darkness Retreat, it made him scratch his head. It seemed like the exclusive skill, Clear Sky, had a restraining effect on Dark-type phase. Lin Yuan had already checked through Chimus' abilities and exclusive skills, so he had a rough idea of them. However, the actual combat effect was obviously unable to be displayed in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. If he asked Chimey to use Nirvana Light and its exclusive skill, Radiant Body, to test its attack ability in the Spirit Lock spatial zone, it would not be able to do so. It would be equivalent to Lin Yuan tearing down the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Lin Yuan felt that he was not a husky, and he would never do something like tearing down a house. Chimey flew to Lin Yuan's ear and affectionately pecked his hair before rubbing its little head against Lin Yuan's cheek. When Chimey was rubbing against Lin Yuan's cheek, it saw Genius looking at it worriedly with red eyes. Chimey immediately jumped onto Genius's little head. It used its delicate beak to help Genius comb the soft and dense fur on its head. Then, Chimey immediately became like the chatterbox in the past and cried out. However, Chimus chirping had been bird chirping previously, but it was now speaking fluent Mandarin. Lin Yuan, Lin Yuan, Lin Yuan, smart, 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 Lin Yuan, Lin Yuan, Lin Yuan, smart, smart, smart. Lin Yuan had previously realized that Chimey always liked to chirp 6 times no matter what. Even if Lin Yuan and Chimey were telepathically connected, Chimus' subconscious chirping was obviously not using its brain. Lin Yuan could not use his spiritual energy to clearly capture the meaning of Chimus chirping. Lin Yuan had always treated Chimus chirping 6 times as Chimus mantra. However, now that Chimey could speak, Lin Yuan finally understood. It turned out that Chimey had always treated its chirping 6 times as its mantra. 3 times were for Lin Yuan's name, and the other 3 times were for Genius's name. Lin Yuan originally thought that if Chimey still could not speak properly after evolving into Fantasy 3, he would definitely teach it a good lesson. But now, Chimey could communicate like a normal person. Furthermore, no sound fetish would be able to reject Chimus' human voice. Not only was Chimus' human voice pleasant to listen to, but it was also filled with spirit chi and had a lively flavor. It made people abnormally relaxed after listening to it, as though they were sitting on the grass and looking at the blue sky while bathing in the sunlight. Lin Yuan extended his finger toward Chimey, and Chimey immediately flew onto his finger. The plume on its head leaned forward and scratched Lin Yuan's palm as it spoke. Lin Yuan, Chimey had a lot of dreams when it was asleep. 80% of the dreams were about you and Genius. After saying that, Chimey suddenly felt a little guilty and didn't say the rest of its words. Even if it was beaten to death, Chimey would never say that the remaining 20% of its dreams were about it live-streaming on StarWeb. Although Chimey had successfully evolved and was on a brand new path that no Fae had taken, be it in terms of bloodline or evolution direction, Lin Yuan still felt abnormally worried. When he recalled Chimus' evolution process, Lin Yuan still felt abnormally worried. Lin Yuan looked at Chimey and very seriously asked a question that he had always wanted to ask. Chimey, why do you care so much about the sound bird bloodline in your body? When Chimey heard Lin Yuan's words, its small brain subconsciously recalled a rainy evening. It had been packed in a cardboard box and had been brought home by a youth. At that time, the youth had used a towel to wipe the feathers on its body that had been drenched by the rain. Then, he had revealed his small white teeth and said to Chimey, "Don't be discouraged, little fellow. Don't be discouraged, little fellow. I'll call you Yin Yin, okay? I'll definitely teach you a song." The youth's encouragement was the first ray of light in Chimey's bird life. It was also the brightest ray of light that Chimey had ever seen. Even when Chimey had seen the resplendent sunlight during its evolution, it couldn't be compared to the dazzling light that the youth in Chimey's heart had given it. This light was the light of redemption that Chimey had seen when it had failed to evolve and wasn't even qualified to be a commodity. It had been packaged up and sold like trash. This light of redemption had given Chimey a home in the cold world. Chimey once again landed beside Lin Yuan's ear and said softly, "No matter when, Chimey wants to be able to stand on Lin Yuan's ear and sing for Genius and Lin Yuan like in the past. Sing the song that Lin Yuan and Genius like. Sing the song that Lin Yuan taught me over and over again." The second song. Seeking recommendation votes and monthly votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 585. Upon hearing that, a smile bloomed on Lin Yuan's face. "Chimey, I remember you wanted me to teach you how to sing before you fell asleep. It just so happens that I also have a song to teach you." Then, Lin Yuan started humming. Upon hearing that Lin Yuan wanted to teach it to sing, Chimey's eyes immediately lit up. Drops of dew, staining the sleeves. The bright sun is charming, gently untying the lotus boat. The reeds are flourishing, the sparrows chirping. By the white stone stream, the setting sun chases the stream. But the golden wind and jade do make the journey too long. Our hearts are linked, and we conspire. The road ahead is rugged, and we climb, and we guard together. 100 years of dusk for you, to the day. Leaning against the mountains and facing the water, the scenery looks old. And your beauty surpasses all, the mountains and rivers are all in one's eyes. Chimey jumped from Lin Yuan's ear to his shoulder. It tilted its head and carefully listened to every note in Lin Yuan's song. As a sound bird, Chimey had always only had one person as its first teacher, and that person was Lin Yuan. However, ever since Chimey had started live streaming on Star Web without discussing with Lin Yuan, it always felt like it was doing something guilty when it came to learning how to sing. Therefore, every time Lin Yuan sang, it could not tell him that it wanted to learn songs. It could only secretly rely on the sound bird's powerful talent for tunes to secretly learn Lin Yuan's songs. However, the feeling of secretly learning to sing was completely different from standing on Lin Yuan's shoulder and listening to him take the initiative to teach it. Chimey could not help but wonder if Lin Yuan would have any thoughts when he received the surprise box from it next year. However, Chimey had a premonition that its sparrow voice lowly goddess identity might not be able to be concealed at any time. Chimey did not remember how long it had slept to evolve its bloodline, nor did it know if the fans who listened to it singing on Star Web missed it. When Chimey had been singing on Star Web previously, it had only been singing. It had never said a sentence that was not a song. All of a sudden, Chimey had the thought of greeting the audience in the live streaming room the next time it live streamed. But before Chimey could think of a reason, a voice suddenly rang out. Chimey was completely attracted by Lin Yuan's song. As a sound bird, Chimey had a strong talent for music that was engraved in its genes and bloodline. Naturally, they also had their own understanding and preferences for music, so they could easily distinguish between good and bad songs. The song that Lin Yuan was teaching him now was very similar to the first song that Lin Yuan had patiently taught him over and over again. The more Chimey listened, the more excited it became. It had already started to flap its wings and dance around in the air along with Lin Yuan's humming. Genius had also climbed onto Lin Yuan's shoulder and laid down quietly, as though it could not get enough no matter how much it laid down. Enjoying the rare tranquility of time. Genius and Lin Yuan had made a trip through the dimensional rift and survived. However, being able to survive inside the dimensional rift was akin to having a new lease of life. This caused Genius's heart to mature quite a bit. After a calamity, he saw his sleeping partner, Yin Yin, wake up. He felt extremely happy. But at that moment, Genius suddenly noticed 2 scratches on the spirit chi clothes on Lin Yuan's shoulders. Genius immediately realized that these 2 scratches were caused by its sharp claws that had accidentally extended out from Chimus' pink flesh pad when it saw Chimus' body being mashed into a ball of flesh. Genius immediately acted like a child that had done something wrong and used its flesh pad to gently rub the skin on Lin Yuan's shoulders that had scratches under the spirit chi clothes. While rubbing, Genius lowered its head and opened its mouth to take 2 gentle breaths of air. It imitated how Lin Yuan had taken care of it and chanted in its heart. Lin Yuan, Genius will blow on it, and it will not hurt anymore. Lin Yuan stopped after humming the song in his memory. Lin Yuan's singing wasn't considered very good, but it was much better than ordinary people. Furthermore, Lin Yuan had a habit when listening to songs. He would firmly remember the lyrics of the songs that he liked to listen to. Therefore, Lin Yuan would be able to roughly remember the lyrics of the songs that he knew. There might be a few lines that he couldn't remember. However, Lin Yuan would complete the lyrics according to the melody and meaning of the lyrics. After listening to Chimus' voice, Lin Yuan felt that if Chimus' voice was used to sing, it would be most suitable to sing ancient songs. The wording of ancient songs was gentle and elegant, just like fragrant tea paired with thin wine. It was fresh and tranquil, but it also had a trace of meaningful charm that wasn't strong. Lin Yuan already knew that Chimey liked to sing, but he now realized that Chimey loved to learn songs. Lin Yuan decided to teach Chimey one of those ancient songs that he had an impression of after a period of time. As a sound bird, it was very easy for Lin Yuan to teach Chimey. Chimey only needed to sing it once, and it would basically learn the entire song. When Lin Yuan saw Chimey flapping its wings excitedly, he asked with a smile, "How much did Chimey remember? How much did Chimey remember? Do you need me to sing it again?" In response, Chimey flapped its wings and landed on the cinnabar sweet osmanthus's branch. As the cinnabar sweet osmanthus had been nourished by massive and pure spiritual power in the spirit lock spatial zone and had been planted in the pure land of bliss, it had also received a trace of Earth's grace's baptism. This caused the cinnabar sweet osmanthus, a plant fey that didn't have many flowers, to be filled with vermilion osmanthus flowers. Once Chimey landed, it was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. It caused the vermilion osmanthus flowers, which were barely hanging on the branch, to rustle down and form a colorful red flower rain. A faint osmanthus fragrance filled the air, and the sweetness in the fragrance made the air a little gentle. At that moment, Chimey learned the tune that Lin Yuan had just sung and started to sing softly. Upon hearing Chimus' singing voice, Lin Yuan felt that he was instantly attracted by Chimus' singing voice. It was as though a painting had appeared in front of him. Or perhaps, Lin Yuan himself seemed to have walked into the painting and become the person in the painting who was looking at the scenery. Lin Yuan seemed to have seen a young lady in front of him, rowing a boat under the beautiful sun. Singing elegant love songs, living by picking lotuses, bathing in spring and autumn together, day and night. Waiting for a person to return by the white stone stream, praying for the tender feelings of the east wind to make the jade couple. Lin Yuan was already used to Chimus' singing voice, but he was still shocked by Chimus' evolved voice. Now that Chimey had learned the human voice and was singing, it wasn't how much its voice had improved or how much its singing technique had improved. Just the emotion between the words was enough to make the whole song more lively. If Chimey had been comparable to those masterclass singers in Lin Yuan's previous life in all aspects before its evolution, if Chimus' singing voice was in Lin Yuan's previous life, music fans would probably call it the #1 songstress in the universe. Even the trisomorphs would become fond of flowers and peace after hearing Chimus' singing voice. However, at that moment, Lin Yuan's heart suddenly thumped. He saw that the cinnabar osmanthus haworthia, which was originally growing on the cinnabar sweet osmanthus, had actually fallen from the tree trunk in the rain of vermilion flowers. This scene reflected in Lin Yuan's eyes, and he suddenly felt as though his lifeblood had been shaken off. Lin Yuan quickly walked forward and used true data to check the cinnabar osmanthus haworthia's attributes. Chapter 586. With one look, Lin Yuan immediately felt relieved and revealed a joyful expression. Thanks to true data, He knew that the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia leaving the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus tree wasn't because of any problems. Instead, it was because the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia had already accumulated enough energy from the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus and successfully advanced to the platinum level. It had become a fully grown earth fay and could already bear fruits. There was no need to stay on the trunk of the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus all day. Everything in the natural world depended on each other, and there would always be giving and receiving. It was the same for the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus and Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia. The Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus had always used its body's energy and nutrients to nourish the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia. This was not because the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus was selfless. Actually, the main reason was because the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus was lusting after the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia's children. It was the fruit of the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia. As a parasitic earth fay, the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia might not have any intelligence. But he also knew that someone was thinking about his child. The scene that was happening before Lin Yuan's eyes was the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia preparing to run off to produce the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus energy for free. Lin Yuan only wanted to say that the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia had been worried for nothing and the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus had been thinking about it for nothing. The Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus child can only be mine. He dug a hole in the white sand of the pure land of bliss and placed the matured Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia inside. Then, he waved his hand and called the wind-speed rapid antelope over. In the future, when you see the beans growing on this thing turn from green to silver, pluck them immediately. The wind-speed rapid antelope understood what Lin Yuan meant and immediately tapped on its head to indicate that it understood. Lin Yuan rubbed the wind-speed rapid antelope's head and looked at the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia. With the head butler around, you can forget about protecting your children. Lin Yuan had entered the spirit lock spatial zone in the middle of the night to work hard, but he had not expected to coincide with Chimus evolution. It should be around 3 o'clock in the morning, almost 4 o'clock. However, Lin Yuan still had enough time. Lin Yuan checked the remaining 52 spirit chi crystals and pondered for a moment. He summoned Red Thorn from the leaf-shaped diamond fay storage box, planning to take advantage of Chimus evolution. He upgraded the acid corrosion queen bee from gold rank level 1 to platinum rank to make up for the red thorny flower's combat ability. To increase the killing intent of the assassin hidden in the sea of flowers. After experiencing the dangers in the dimensional rift, Lin Yuan had developed a new understanding. Since he had spirit crystals on hand, he might as well maximize his strength. The amount of spirit chi crystals required to upgrade the acid corrosion queen bee from gold eye legacy to platinum eye legacy was about the same as upgrading a silver fantasy breed fay to gold fantasy breed. Therefore, after raising the acid corrosion queen bee's strength to platinum eye legend, he would still have over 30 spirit chi crystals left in his hands. It was more than enough for daily consumption. After plundering the earth baptism, Lin Yuan obtained a large number of spirit chi crystals. Lin Yuan's view of spirit chi crystals had also quietly changed. He was no longer as meticulous with every spirit crystal as he used to be. Moreover, Lin Yuan was already planning to let the pure land of bliss get another wave of earth grace. After having this thought, Lin Yuan felt that he was simply the most hated person by myth-breed fays. The pure land of bliss coveted the earth grace that myth-breed fays seemed to have undergone earth baptism. The sacred sword-hugging queen coveted the law crystals in myth-breed fays. With this thought, Lin Yuan felt that he was indeed a little hateful. He could totally change his name from Lin Yuan to Hateful Lin. Lin Yuan still had one willpower rune in his spiritual energy that he had yet to use. The blue flash purple butterfly, genius, and black were all stuck at Bronze X legacy. Without a suitable willpower rune, they could not become fantasy breeds. Moreover, Red Thorn could only evolve and increase its quality by devouring flesh and blood. Therefore, the blue flash purple butterfly, genius, black, and Red Thorn did not have the fortune to enjoy the spirit chi crystals. Only the jasmine lily, chimey, the source sand, and the acid corrosion queen bee could consume the spirit chi crystals. Since chimey and the source sand had already become gold fantasy breeds, they would need to consume 10 spirit chi crystals for each grade. Lin Yuan had to admit that he could not afford to feed them now. As for the jasmine lily, even if he squeezed every drop out of it, it would not be able to evolve by 1 grade. Therefore, Lin Yuan could only rear the acid corrosion queen bee. He could only afford to rear the acid corrosion queen bee. After Lin Yuan summoned Red Thorn, that slippery vine wrapped around Lin Yuan's waist and refused to let go. As for the mouth of Relinquish, it was letting out a rumbling sound. Without needing to think, Lin Yuan knew that Red Thorn's mouth of Relinquish was rapidly digesting the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh. When Chimey and Genius saw that Lin Yuan had summoned Red Thorn, they each landed on one side of Red Thorn's gill-shaped petals. The gill filaments in Red Thorn's gill-shaped petals opened up, extending the red flower that originally had a diameter of 1 meter by more than double. The gill filaments were like a gauze net that enveloped Genius and Chimey before gently swaying. The gauze net, which allowed Genius and Chimey to feel comfortable, blocked the swing. Lin Yuan used his hand to rub Red Thorn's smooth vine and suddenly felt that it was rather smooth. Lin Yuan said to Red Thorn, "Red Thorn, summon the acid corrosion queen bee." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's instructions, Red Thorn's mouth of Relinquish trembled. The acid corrosion queen bee that was sleeping in the mouth of Relinquish was poured out like trash. On the other hand, the acid corrosion queen bee wasn't annoyed after being knocked out by Red Thorn. Instead, it pounced on Red Thorn like a bootlicker. Lin Yuan could not help but shiver when he saw the acid corrosion queen bee's performance. In Lin Yuan's heart, the acid corrosion queen bee could already be considered an artist. The acid corrosion queen bee was a source-type lifeform that displayed the art of flattery to the extreme. Lin Yuan reached out to grab the acid corrosion queen bee's flapping wings and brought them close to him. He checked the level of the acid corrosion queen bee. After checking the level, Lin Yuan raised his brows in surprise. When he had just enhanced the acid corrosion queen bee, it had only been gold eye. During this period of time, Lin Li didn't know how much acid the acid corrosion queen bee had drunk in Red Thorn's stomach as a bootlicker. It had actually leveled up to gold rank 4. The acid corrosion queen bee originally wanted to lick Red Thorn but was stopped by Lin Yuan. It was obviously a little unwilling. However, when it thought of Red Thorn's attitude toward Lin Yuan, the acid corrosion queen bee's trace of unwillingness immediately vanished. Instead, it was thinking about how to make its wings softer so that Lin Yuan could pinch them more comfortably. Lin Yuan didn't say anything and took out 16 spirit chi crystals and crushed them. A massive amount of pure spiritual power swept toward the acid corrosion queen bee. He let the acid corrosion queen bee evolve toward platinum or legacy. The evolution of an ordinary fae was far from as big as the evolution of a fantasy breed fae. However, in Lin Yuan's opinion, the acid corrosion queen bee's posture during the evolution process was somewhat abnormal. It was even comparable to the posture of Chu Ci's sharp iron hornbull when it evolved into a fantasy breed obsidian iron wild bull. Chapter 587. The original body of the acid corrosion queen bee was only about 15 centimeters long. Its slender body had a dark red metallic luster. There were also strange dark green markings hidden under the dark red metallic luster, with a cruel and ferocious beauty. Suddenly, the evolving acid corrosion queen bee's body became illusory. This illusory was not because the frequency of the acid corrosion queen bee's wings was too fast, making it impossible for Lin Yuan to see its movements with his naked eye. Instead, the dark red and dark green markings on the acid corrosion queen bee's body were constantly fading. It was as if the acid corrosion queen bee was stripping the colors out of its body bit by bit. Then, the metallic luster on the acid corrosion queen bee's body became even richer. This rich metallic luster made the acid corrosion queen bee look as if it had become a transparent existence. The acid corrosion queen bee seemed to have become a metal mirror. Despite being in the spirit lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan could still see the acid corrosion queen bee's existence. However, the acid corrosion queen bee's presence was undoubtedly much weaker than before. Lin Yuan could not help but think. If the acid corrosion queen bee flew among the flowers formed by the red thorn, its mirror-like metal body would reflect the scene in the flowers. It could perfectly hide in the flowers and be an assassin waiting to kill its target. The two sharp stingers on the acid corrosion queen bee's forelimbs had also become more slender. The sharp tip of the stingers had a penetrating cold glint. Obviously, the penetrating power and sharpness had greatly improved. However, in Lin Yuan's opinion, the biggest change was the two stingers at the back of the acid corrosion queen bee's tail. At this time, the stinger on the acid corrosion queen bee's tail was much shorter than before, and it was far less aggressive than before. However, when Lin Yuan looked closely, he found that the two stingers at the back of the acid corrosion queen bee's tail had become two segments. Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly and shook his hand gently. The amber button-shaped source sand on his wrist fell on the rain and turned into rolling quicksand. These quicksand gathered at his feet and protected him like a guard. The acid corrosion queen bee had now completely evolved into a platinum legendary fae. Lin Yuan thought for a moment and ordered the acid corrosion queen bee. Acid corrosion queen bee, use your exclusive skill 2-hit kill on the sand wall. He pointed at his feet and immediately let the guard sand form a sand wall. The source sand had completely digested the mountain-containing embryo. However, after digesting the mountain-containing embryo, the source sand did not upgrade its quality to Fantasy 3 as Lin Yuan had expected. It seemed like he wanted to raise the source sand's quality to Fantasy 3 in the future and undergo a huge transformation. Lin Yuan still needed to do something else. However, when the source sand's quality reached Fantasy 2, it gave birth to the guard sand, which made him very happy. In terms of defense, the guard sand that could surround him was second only to the 4 wings formed by the day and night spirit silver. Upon hearing his order, the acid corrosion queen bee did not fly toward the sand wall like before. Instead, it lifted its tail, and 2 air-piercing sounds echoed. Lin Yuan saw 2 short stingers appear on the sand wall formed by the guard sand. He immediately looked at the acid corrosion queen bee's tail and saw that its 2 stingers had become one. After this attack, the acid corrosion queen bee's aura had clearly weakened a little. However, Lin Yuan could see with the naked eye that a new stinger protruded from the bottom of the 2 stingers that had turned into one. The 2 stingers that had turned into one became 2 again. After looking at the acid corrosion queen bee's tail, Lin Yuan lowered his head and was shocked to find that the center of the sand wall formed by the guard sand had disappeared. It had turned into a pool of liquid. Obviously, the 2 poisons contained in the 2 stingers had disintegrated the source sand, which was a pure elemental body. The source sand was now a Gold Eye Fantasy 2 existence that was about to become a Gold Eye Fantasy 3 existence, while the acid corrosion queen bee was now a Platinum Eye source-type lifeform. According to grade and quality, the source sand was a little stronger. When Lin Yuan had nurtured the elemental source-type source sand, he had let the source sand mainly take the defensive route. Even so, the guard sand, which was full of high-purity ferromanganese, had still disintegrated into liquid. If this hit a body of flesh, the damage would be unimaginable. In the previous Star Web duel, Lin Yuan had commanded the acid corrosion queen bee to use its exclusive skill, 2-hit kill. However, while Lin Yuan had affirmed the 2 one-hit kill's destructive power, he had also discovered the limitations of the 2 one-hit kill. The 2-hit kill required the acid corrosion queen bee to fly close to the target and stab the 2 stingers at the target's back into the same spot. This could be an extremely harsh thing in a battle. However, now that the acid corrosion queen bee had reached platinum, the evolution of the stingers made the exclusive skill 2-hit kill more flexible. Lin Yuan used true data to check the advanced acid corrosion queen bee's attributes. Fey name, acid corrosion queen bee, Fey species, Vespertilionidae stinger species, Fey grade, platinum, 110, Fey type, source poison, Fey quality, legendary abilities sad smiley wing stealth, flaps its wings at a high frequency. The rapid flapping of the reflective wings causes the acid corrosion queen bee to enter a certain stealth state. Bone-piercing stinger, the rotating stingers with super hardness and impact force rapidly attack, causing bone-piercing injuries. Parasitic wasp pupa, the acid corrosion queen bee stingers can release a rapidly incubating parasitic wasp pupa into the target's body. Acid-swallowing larva, the acid corrosion queen bee will hatch a large number of acid-swallowing larvae when there is enough acid. As the acid corrosion queen bee's food, the acid-swallowing larvae can quickly recover the acid corrosion queen bee's consumed energy and venom reserves. At the same time, the acid-swallowing larvae will replicate a portion of the acid corrosion queen bee's mother's genes. If the mother dies, the replicated genes in the acid-swallowing larvae will be activated, allowing the acid-swallowing larvae to become the new mother. Acid corpse BGU consumes a large amount of acid in the body to produce an acid corpse BGU. The acid corpse BGU resides in a dead Fey or dimensional lifeform and can control the movement of the dead Fey or dimensional lifeform. If the acid corpse BGU's host Fey or dimensional lifeform is not activated by the acid corrosion queen bee, it will once again turn into a chrysalis. Exclusive skill Sad Smiley 2-hit kill. The two stingers carry two different kinds of acid corrosion venom. If the two stingers hit the same part of the target, the two kinds of venom will fuse and instantly disintegrate the target's body. Lin Yuan was originally prepared to see the acid corrosion queen bee's newly comprehended abilities after reaching platinum. However, he was attracted by the acid corrosion queen bee's gold ability, acid swallowing larva. Chapter 588. After all, the acid corrosion queen bee had yet to evolve into a fantasy breed. Unlike fantasy breed phase, there was a high chance that their abilities would change along with their grade. An ordinary phase advanced ability would be upgraded, and it could be considered a very rare occurrence. However, it wasn't like Lin Yuan had never encountered such incidents before, as he used evolved phase as a cultivation method. However, after the acid corrosion queen bee advanced to the platinum level, its gold level skill, acid swallowing larvae, had changed a little too much. If only the blade queen bee, the mother of the blade worms that he had encountered in the evolving dimensional rift, had the same ability. In that case, Zhu Luo would not have survived no matter what. He could not help but wonder if the acid corrosion queen bee had comprehended the true tomb of a bootlicker when it was licking red thorn. He had successfully advanced from an excellent bootlicker to a fearless bootlicker. Moreover, this dog was not afraid of death and had mastered the impure earth reincarnation ability. This allowed the acid corrosion queen bee to be a more terrifying assassin than terrorists in battle, specializing in suicide attacks. The acid corrosion queen bee had stored countless acid-swallowing larvae in red thorn's mouth of relinquish. These acid ingestion larvae had the capital to make the acid corrosion queen bee happily jump on the edge of life and death. The acid corrosion queen bee could even use the acid-swallowing larvae as a combat tool. During the battle, the acid corrosion queen bee could let red thorn transport the acid-swallowing larvae through the pipe connected to the child ramets. Then, after death, the acid-swallowing larvae would resurrect and suddenly assassinate the target. At the thought of this, Lin Yuan felt goosebumps all over his body. When he saw the acid corrosion queen bee's platinum ability, he looked at it in surprise again. He felt that the acid corrosion queen bee was not only a courageous bootlicker but also a super freeloader. The acid corrosion queen bee parasitized red thorn's body. As red thorn evolved, it was able to get all sorts of benefits for free. As a queen bee, the acid corrosion queen bee had the ability to produce. However, the acid eater larvae were only used as food. Even if the parasitic pupae hatched in the target's body, most of them would not be able to escape the fate of being devoured by the acid corrosion queen bee. She was clearly a queen bee, but she was like a commander without an army. Now, the acid corrosion queen bee's platinum ability gave the acid corrosion queen bee a chance to have subordinates. However, for the acid corrosion queen bee's subordinates to be born, they still needed to freeload the shells that other Fays had painstakingly grown. In his opinion, the acid corpse BGU was indeed worthy of being the parasitic source-type lifeform, the acid corrosion queen bee's child. Sure enough, she took after her mother. She was just like her mother. He planned to experiment with the acid corrosion queen bee's platinum ability, acid corpse BGU. The acid corpse BGU was free, but in Lin Yuan's opinion, it still had strategic significance. GU to corrosion queen bee to B was 2. The acid to, the queen bee to B2. Dimensional corrosion dimensional lifeforms were 2. Of the bodies of A to B to B to B to 2. Compared to FE. GU. Yang to B to 2. GU corrosion GU. Lin, GU. Lin, GU to 2. In short, the acid corpse BGU's applicability to the internal environment of dimensional lifeforms was good news to Lin Yuan. However, He did not know which dead dimensional lifeform was the most suitable for the acid corrosion queen bee to produce the acid corpse BGU. Suddenly, Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. He thought of water world dimensional lifeforms. He didn't have a strong underwater combat ability, so could he use this method to make up for it? However, with just this thought, he immediately rejected it. The acid to corrosion queen bee parasitized Red Thorn's body. It could be seen as one with Red Thorn. The dimensional lifeform parasitized by the acid to corrosion queen bee's platinum ability was undoubtedly suitable to fight in flowers. If it was a water world dimensional lifeform, it would have no supporting effect on Red Thorn's combat ability. Red Thorn now had the ability to breathe underwater and could be considered a member of Lin Yuan's underwater combat power. However, there were very few opportunities for a landlubber like Lin Yuan to fight in the water. Therefore, it was the most cost-effective to parasitize dimensional lifeforms that were suitable for fighting on land. Dimensional lifeforms that fought on land had too many choices. However, Lin Yuan felt that those powerful land-based dimensional lifeforms were not suitable to fight in Red Thorn's Sea of Flowers. An abyss-dimensional creature like the Horned Demon was strong, but when fighting in the Sea of Flowers, the Horned Demon alone would destroy the child plants in the Sea of Flowers. This was a restriction on Red Thorn's combat ability. Lin Yuan thought for a while and sighed. He took out the heart-penetrating iron line from his leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. Among the dimensional lifeforms that Lin Yuan currently had, the heart-penetrating iron line, which had a large body and could use the flowers for assassination, was undoubtedly the most suitable one among the dimensional lifeforms in his hands. However, in Lin Yuan's opinion, this was obviously not the best choice. There were many types of dimensional lifeforms in dimensional rifts, and many of them would evolve and mutate during their growth. Lin Yuan planned to pay more attention to auctions related to precious dead dimensional lifeforms in the future. He wanted to see if he could get an existence that had evolved and mutated. If there was a suitable one, he could get it for the acid corrosion queen bee. Anyway, as long as there was enough acid in the acid corrosion queen bee's body, there were no specific restrictions on producing acid corpse BGU. However, Lin Yuan's idea was defeated by reality. He let the acid corrosion queen bee choose the heart-penetrating iron line of various grades and choose a body that the acid corpse BGU could control to the limit. After a series of choices, the acid corrosion queen bee chose a heart-penetrating iron line that was equivalent to a platinum eye. Lin Yuan's eyelids twitched as he watched the process of the acid corrosion queen bee stabbing the heart-penetrating iron line's body. The acid corrosion queen bee's stinger was already abnormally sharp after reaching platinum, but it still took so much effort to pierce the heart-penetrating iron line's body. He could not help but sigh at the strength of the heart-penetrating iron line's body. After the acid corrosion queen bee stabbed the stinger into the heart-penetrating iron line's body, its body trembled like a sieve. After pulling out the stinger, the acid corrosion queen bee fell to the ground without even the strength to flap its wings. Lin Yuan hurriedly used true data to examine the acid corrosion queen bee. Chapter 589. He found that the acid corrosion queen bee actually entered a weakened state after producing an acid corpse BGU. Furthermore, he had been weakened for a full 3 days. According to True Data's detection of the acid in the acid corrosion queen bee's body, Lin Yuan speculated that the acid corrosion queen bee would need at least 1 month to recover if it wanted to use the platinum acid corpse BGU once. At that moment, Lin Yuan really felt that the acid corrosion queen bee was like a woman. After giving birth, she had to spend 3 days in confinement, and then cool down for a period of time before she could give birth again. However, the cool-down period of the acid corrosion queen bee was much shorter than that of a human woman. With a wave of his hand, Lin Yuan retrieved the remaining heart-penetrating iron line that the acid corrosion queen bee had not chosen. After a series of tests, he also understood the limits of the dimensional lifeforms' bodies that the acid corpse BGU could control. That was, the strength of these dimensional creatures couldn't exceed the acid corrosion queen bee's strength when they were alive. In just a few minutes, Lin Yuan saw that there seemed to be something constantly crawling in the heart-penetrating iron line that had been injected with the acid corpse BGU. When this thing climbed to the head of the heart-penetrating iron line, the entire heart-penetrating iron line began to twist its body. Lin Yuan sensed the heart-penetrating ion line state and realized that the acid corpse BGU controlling the heart-penetrating ion line was no different from a living heart-penetrating ion line. If there was a difference, it would be that the heart-penetrating ion line controlled by the acid corpse BGU would not be affected by fear and pain. It became a puppet that only obeyed the acid corrosion queen bee's orders. The acid corrosion queen bee let out a buzzing sound as it fell to the ground. Following this buzzing sound, the body of the heart-piercing iron wire controlled by the acid corpse BGU immediately shrunk. It slowly turned into a black pupa that was less than half the size of Lin Yuan's finger. In its weakened state, the acid corrosion queen bee could not even get up. Thus, Lin Yuan let Red Thorn wave its vines to recall the acid corrosion queen bee and the acid corpse BGU back into its body. 1 month might seem very long, but Lin Yuan didn't mind it at all. According to this speed, the birth of 12 puppets per year had far exceeded his expectations. After evolving the acid corrosion bee, he stored Red Thorn back into the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. He allowed Red Thorn to continue devouring the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh to produce the Eye of Relinquish and nourish the Blood Brew grapevine. He turned around and realized that Genius and Chimey were on the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's trunk, looking rather mysterious. He had no idea what he was fiddling with. Lin Yuan shook his head and didn't disturb Genius and Chimey. He was preparing to get busy with his own matters. At that moment, the source sand at Lin Yuan's feet squirmed rapidly. Something was spat out from the sand. Lin Yuan took a look and found that this pile of things was the golden metal discs that he had not had time to put away in the dimensional rift, as well as the 30 source-type items that he had taken out of the dimensional hub and fainted. He didn't expect the source sand to help him keep these things after he fainted. Lin Yuan felt that the source sand was simply too thoughtful. 30 source-type items were a considerable amount of wealth for him now, but what really surprised him was not these 30 source-type items. Instead, it was the pile of golden metal discs. With these metal discs, Lin Yuan no longer needed to be like a henchman, constantly replenishing the energy ores in the spirit pool every once in a while. The energy ores in the beetle-shaped diamond face storage box were divided into nearly 100 golden metal discs. These golden metal discs ate all the energy ores in the beetle-shaped diamond face storage box. Lin Yuan stacked nearly 100 golden metal discs at the bottom of the spirit pool. Together with the ginkgo leaf-shaped butterfly shell flowers that covered the bottom of the spirit pool, it looked quite beautiful. This way, even if Morbius evolved into a fantasy breed spirit lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan would be able to sleep peacefully for a long time. Lin Yuan shook his body and took out the 2 golden peonies from the face storage box. He placed them together with the 108 starlight grasses and 36 floating cloud flowers. Then, he summoned Ju Luo's contracted bronze epic dark snake dragon lizard and rotten mud lizard, as well as the fairy source-type burning sunflower and bronze X-epic Vaja butterfly he had prepared for Chu Ci. He took the remaining 36 spirit chi crystals for the acid corrosion queen bee to reach platinum. After calculating for a while, he directly crushed 2 of the spirit crystals. Since Morbius was already asleep, he could only guide the spirit chi in the 2 spirit chi crystals toward the burning sunflower, the Vaja butterfly, the dark snake dragon lizard, and the rotten mud lizard. Soon, the burning sunflower, the Vaja butterfly, the dark snake dragon lizard, and the rotten mud lizard were all under the effect of this vast and pure spiritual energy. He had successfully advanced from bronze epic to bronze legendary. Then, he continued to direct the spirit chi toward the 108 starlight grasses, 36 floating cloud flowers, and 2 golden peonies. The starlight grass and floating cloud flower that he had chosen were mostly bronze 7 elite and above. This saved him a lot of spirit chi consumption in the spirit chi crystals. The 108 starlight grasses, 36 floating cloud flowers, and 2 golden peonies all started to increase in quality and grade, but there was a slight deviation from Lin Yuan's calculations. The 2 spirit chi crystals had been upgraded from bronze epic to legendary due to the previous 4 phase. As a result, over 20 starlight grasses did not reach bronze X epic due to the lack of spirit chi. Lin Yuan thought for a while and crushed another spirit chi crystal. But this time, The spirit chi in one spirit chi crystal was clearly not completely consumed after promoting over 20 starlight grasses to bronze X epic. There was still a lot left. Lin Yuan sensed the remaining spirit chi and pondered for a moment before guiding the remaining spirit chi into the 2 golden peonies that had reached bronze X epic. Under the nourishment of the remaining spirit chi, the 2 golden peonies successfully advanced to bronze legendary. The burning sunflower, Vajra butterfly, dark snake dragon lizard, and rotten mud dragon, which had been upgraded to bronze legendary, did not have much change. If there was a change, it would be that the rotten mud dragon had evolved into the rotten mudshield dragon when it reached bronze. The rotten mudshield dragon was considered a variant of the rotten mud dragon with enhanced defense, but its appearance did not change much. However, when these 2 golden peonies that relied on their faces were promoted from bronze epic to legendary, they retained the dignity of relying on their faces. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 590. The layers of golden petals began to bend backward rapidly, and the tiny petals inside turned from a single layer to multiple layers that grew outward savagely. The golden dress peon's face, which relied on its face to make a living, expanded by more than twice. However, in Lin Yuan's opinion, the golden dress peon's beauty had increased by at least 10 times. The golden dress peony itself was useless to Lin Yuan. He had chosen to enhance it because Chu Ci's Vajra butterfly needed to pick the golden dress peon's pollen to become a fantasy breed. Moreover, the pollen of the golden dress peony, a metalwood fay, was usually used to feed the golden dress peon's Vajra butterfly to become a fantasy breed. The golden dress peon's outstanding point was only its appearance and not its special fragrance. However, it was also because it did not have any fragrance that it was more suitable to be used as a decoration in the mansion. When Lin Yuan saw that the remaining 36 spirit chi crystals had suddenly become 33, he felt a heartache. However, time was of the essence. Lin Yuan had set the time to announce his private territory's functions and open the territory to the public on the 3rd day of the new year. Therefore, if Lin Yuan wanted to rely on his own ability to slowly upgrade these 108 starlight grasses and 36 floating cloud flowers to bronze epic, it was obviously impossible. After this extravagance, Lin Yuan decided that he would not be so extravagant in the future. Since Lin Yuan used the spirit chi crystals, he completed the huge workload in less than 20 minutes. After he was done, he realized that Genius and Chimey were nowhere to be seen. He looked up and saw 2 vague figures leaning against each other between the leaves at the top of the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree. Lin Yuan thought that Genius and Chimey were resting, so he left the Spirit Lock spatial zone and logged onto Star Web. He did not know that the moment he logged onto Star Web, his 2 little fellows in the Spirit Lock spatial zone had set off a storm on Star Web on the eve of the new year. In the Shallan Guild Club's training base, 2 youths were sitting in front of a table in a room with very distinctive decorations. One of the youths with peach blossom eyes was drinking, and he choked on a mouthful of strong alcohol, causing him to cough. The other youth looked at the youth with peach blossom eyes with a hint of worry on his face. The mature and steady young man looked around the room that could be used as a cloakroom and said to the young man with peach blossom eyes who was drinking alone, "By how, I won't be accompanying my girlfriend for Chinese New Year tomorrow. How about I go shopping with you? Looking at your room, it's been 2 months since you've properly changed your clothes." As he spoke, Wang Fan recalled Bai Hao's usual speed of buying clothes in a month. He knew that Bai Hao's depression was not an act. Wang Fan knew that Bai Hao liked to listen to songs. In the past few years, Bai Hao would often listen to some live streamers singing on Star Web in his spare time. However, there had never been a situation where people were frantically tipping him. Bai Hao had only been following a live streamer for about 2 months. How could Bai Hao be in such a state? This made Wang Fan, one of the Iron Triangle, both confused and worried. Bai Hao rolled his eyes at Wang Fan and said listlessly, "If you don't accompany your girlfriend, won't your girlfriend get her bears to jump up and squash me to death when our team is playing?" Wang Fan scratched the back of his head awkwardly. His wife was indeed a little fierce. However, his wife's bears were definitely not fierce at all. They were punished by his wife to stand at the door with him in the middle of the night. As a station mate, Wang Fan felt that those bears were really silly. It's the all-star competition the day after tomorrow. Both of us will have to go. You mustn't drink so much during these 2 days and harm yourself. Otherwise, if someone really chooses you to challenge or instruct you, it won't look good if you're too listless and get photographed by the Star Web reporters. Bai Hao rubbed his slightly red peach blossom eyes and said indifferently, anyway, Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess isn't live streaming. I won't have any fun in this life if Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess doesn't live stream. Just let me drink until I die. When Wang Fan heard Bai Hao's words, he pouted helplessly and pretended not to hear it. Not only did Bai Hao have a sharp tongue, but he was also a classic tsunda. As Bai Hao's close friend and teammate, Wang Fan was already used to Bai Hao's character. Wang Fan was about to persuade Bai Hao again when Bai Hao's phone suddenly rang. Bai Hao picked up the phone slowly and listlessly, but a moment later, Wang Fan noticed that Bai Hao's eyes were shining brightly. It was as if he had found something that he had lost. He was surprised, excited, and precious. Wang Fan didn't know what had happened, so he simply said what he wanted to say. Bai Hao, I remember that you only like to listen to old-fashioned songs. The songs sung by that Star Web streamer, Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess, really don't have any old-fashioned songs. How about, before Wang Fan could finish speaking, Bai Hao's originally gloomy face immediately turned into a mischievous one. His reddened peach blossom eyes also curved, filled with the joy of a peach blossom. What the hell do you know? It's true that I like ancient songs, but as long as it's the voice of the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess, I like it. Wang Fan pursed his lips when he heard Bai Hao's words. He had already guessed why Bai Hao suddenly became a master of changing faces in Sichuan opera. She must have received news of the Star Web streamer Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess rebroadcast. Wang Fan heard Bai Hao say, "You said before that you will accompany me to go shopping tomorrow, and I will allow it. Give your thanks." Wang Fan immediately objected. "You're completely fine now, and you're even happier than me. I'm not going shopping with you. Otherwise, I'll have to stand the whole night with those bears on New Year's Eve. Not going, not going. Accompanying my wife is the most important thing." Bai Hao snorted lightly when he heard that. "If you don't go on New Year's Eve, you'll be punished to stand. I'll bring you food in the middle of the night." After speaking, Bai Hao did not care that Wang Fan was still there and immediately logged into the Star Web card. He came to the livestream room that made him dazed countless times in the middle of the night. As soon as he entered the live broadcast room, Bai Hao was surprised to hear an ethereal and gentle voice. "Thank you, everyone, for always supporting me, the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess. Now, I will sing a song that I have just learned." Bai Hao cursed in his heart. The Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess had actually spoken. Bai Hao quickly exchanged the 1 million radiance dollars in his Star Web card into gifts and sent them over. Originally, he had planned to send out 10 in a row, but before he could do so, he had already fallen into the song. The first one was even better. Seeking monthly votes and recommendation votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 591. Bai Hao saw the back of a woman beside the white stone stream under the breeze. The woman's back was facing him, and she was singing the song that he was hearing now. The melodious singing was the most gentle shackle. Unknowingly, her heart, which was already beating wildly, was firmly locked up. Lin Yuan logged into Star Web and immediately set off for his faction territory. Since he was going to his Star Web private faction territory this time, he wore the mask made by Hu Quan. His Star Web private faction had yet to publish its functions, so he thought it would be very quiet. However, as soon as he entered, he found 7 or 8 people standing outside his private territory chatting. Lin Yuan was a little puzzled at first, but when he heard the content of their conversation, Lin Yuan's face was immediately covered with black lines. Lin Yuan logged into Star Web and immediately set off for his faction territory. Since he was going to his Star Web private faction territory this time, he wore the mask made by Hu Quan. Since his Star Web private faction had yet to publish its functions, he thought it would be very quiet. However, as soon as he entered, he found 7 or 8 people standing outside his private territory chatting. Lin Yuan was a little puzzled at first, but when he heard the content of their conversation, Lin Yuan's face was immediately covered with black lines. "Why do you guys come here in the middle of the night every day? Are you so good at watching the show? You're talking about us. You're the only one who doesn't pull seats every day. Speaking of which, you're quite sinister. You come to mock this rising faction called Sky City at a fixed time every day. I'm not mocking this rising faction, Sky City. I just feel that it's a little pitiful. Although the Nut Mercenaries are also a newly established force, if I were to encounter a member of a private force like Sky City, I would also be willing to donate some items to the newly established force, Sky City, to show off their reputation. The others looked at this member of the Nut Mercenary faction and felt as though they had eaten a fly. We've agreed to leave here later and go to your Nut Mercenary faction territory to watch the show. Your Nut Mercenary faction territory doesn't have any hard goods, yet you're still using such a high and mighty tone to want to give charity to other rising factions. Is he worthy? The pot calling the kettle black. Lin Yuan smacked his lips and glanced at them, lamenting that they were really free. Isn't it better to sleep in the middle of the night? Lin Yuan ignored them and walked into his Star Web private territory. The others had noticed Lin Yuan as soon as he arrived. At first, they only thought that Lin Yuan was just watching the show. However, he didn't expect the newcomer to be a member of Sky City. After entering the private territory, Lin Yuan checked the visitor records of his faction territory. He realized that it had taken him 5 minutes to look through the visitor records from the early hours of this morning. Thus, he gave up on the idea of checking the visitor records. At that moment, Lin Yuan realized that he had received an email from the Star Web officials in his faction territory's mailbox. When Lin Yuan saw it, he felt that he had a lot of small question marks. During this month, his Star Web private faction territory had actually appeared on the private territories visitor list. Star Web's private territories had many rankings on the official website. Most of the rankings were relatively authoritative. It could symbolize the status of Star Web's private territory. Although a list like the visitor list was not considered an authoritative list, it was still considered a higher ranking. However, among the many non-authoritative lists, it was still considered to be one of the more valuable ones. After all, the visitor list represented the number of visitors to the Star Web private faction territory every day. Lin Yuan might feel happy if his Star Web private faction territory was only on the visitor list after it had published its functions. However, his Star Web private faction territory had not even published its functions. To put it bluntly, it was no different from an empty space. An empty space naturally would not attract people. In other words, these visitors were all here to watch the show. It was also because of these spectators that Sky City's private territory was ranked as high as 87th on the list of visitors. Even now, he was still in the 98th place on the list of friends. Lin Yuan had not put much thought into the Star Web private faction territory recently. He did not expect that his inadvertent action of not turning off the private faction territory's access authority would make a joke of himself to so many people. However, although Lin Yuan felt speechless about this situation, he did not think of a way to stop it. The current situation was equivalent to these people who came to watch the show helping Sky City to do free publicity in advance. Lin Yuan still did not intend to set up the Star Web private territory's exterior. However, Lin Yuan and the Class 5 spirit craftsman Hu Quan had spent a lot of effort on the interior design. Lin Yuan took out all the things that he had swept in through the Star Web card and piled them on the hall's floor. Then, he hung Hu Quan's wheels carved from various completely jade-textured wood on the wall in the hall. These completely jade-textured wheels decorated the walls everywhere in the hall, contrasting with the bluish-white wall tiles in the hall and giving off a different kind of nobility. Then, Lin Yuan used the golden threads that Hu Quan had extracted from the completely jade-textured gold-threaded Nanmu, and connected the roulette wheels together. There were a total of 108 wheels made of completely jade-textured wood. There was a groove in the center of each wheel, and Lin Yuan placed a bronze epic starlight grass in each groove. As a kind of fey that mainly played a decorative role, the starlight grass itself could also release weak spirit chi. Moreover, the star-like leaves of the starlight grass would automatically sway from side to side. The sway of the starlight grass's leaves made each wheel spin, which drove the gold-threaded Nanmu's golden threads to wander. At the same time, the spirit chi released by the starlight grass made the completely jade-textured wheels and the golden threads extracted from the completely jade-textured gold-threaded Nanmu's bodies emit a prison-like luster as they rotated. The shining golden threads and the shining star patterns on the starlight grass leaves seemed to form a constellation of many stars. It was as though it was daytime, but the stars in the sky had transformed into a celestial sign that towered over the blue sky. Those rotating wheels were like rudders that were unmanned but freely rotating in the sky. Above the heavens, these freely rotating rudders seemed to be using the golden threads to control the fate of all things in the mortal world. At that moment, the interior layout of the Star Web private territory could be called an unparalleled scene. Second update, seeking recommendation votes and monthly votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 592. Although it was already an unparalleled scene, Lin Yuan was not done with his setup. Then, he placed the 36 bronze epic floating cloud flowers on it. Each floating cloud flower was placed between the 3 rotating wheels. In an instant, a hazy cloud rose from the floating cloud flower, obscuring the bright stars and the wheel. However, the bright starlight could not be completely covered, and the clouds rising from the floating cloud flowers only added a hint of haziness and an immortal aura between the wheels and the stars. Lin Yuan's setup was basically completed. Lin Yuan thought for a while and raised his hand to put away the completely jade-textured wooden table that Hu Quan had just ordered. He did not replace the ordinary wooden table that had been gifted when he had built the Star Web private faction territory. The ordinary wooden table was like a myriad manifestation of mortality, which was holding a bronze legend oath lily of the valley. Each of the bell-like white flowers of the oath lily of the valley flickered with a faint light from time to time, as though they were collecting the oaths and faith of the mortal world for the stars under the control of the heaven wheel. After Lin Yuan left his Star Web private faction territory, he found that the number of people watching the show outside was more than 5 times more than before he had entered. Moreover, people were still coming over one after another. Obviously, after those people realized that he had entered, they had called for more people to watch the show. Lin Yuan could not help but sigh. Did these people not need to sleep during the new year? Could watching the show make a living? Lin Yuan did not have time to waste with these people. He only needed to wait until the 3rd day of the new year to show the grand scene inside Sky City's private faction territory that was like in the clouds. After Lin Yuan exited Star Web, he pulled out the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus from the Pure Land of Bliss in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Then, he took the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus to the courtyard and prepared to plant it in front of the mansion's main entrance. Lin Yuan had kept the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus in the Spirit Lock spatial zone because of the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia. He was a child who craved the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia to improve his spiritual energy. Now that the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia had left the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus, Lin Yuan wanted to pour out the Pure Land of Bliss in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. In any case, the damaged source of the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus that had its tree core dug out had long since recovered. Just in time for the new year, an Osmanthus was planted in front of the house. It could be considered as the new Osmanthus entering the house, adding a bit of nobility to the house. The sky was already starting to brighten, and just as Lin Yuan was commanding the source sand to dig the pit, a voice suddenly rang out. Wen Yu's voice suddenly came from beside him. "Young master, you haven't slept all night. Why don't you have a little purple Ganoderma lamb soup that Liu Jie simmered last night?" Wen Yu knew that Hu Quan's contracted vitality sloth had restored Lin Yuan's vitality chi. Lin Yuan couldn't fall asleep no matter how hard he tried. However, she didn't expect Lin Yuan to be preparing to plant flowers in front of the mansion early in the morning. Wen Yu was a spirit attendant of the Radiant Moon Palace, so she naturally recognized the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus at a glance. The Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus was not considered an outstanding species among all the Osmanthus flowers. If they had to be ranked, they could only be ranked in the upper middle class. They couldn't even enter the upper class. However, the most interesting thing about the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus was that the probability of mutation during the process of evolution was extremely high. It was rumored that one of the 10 famous Osmanthus species, which was already extinct, was constantly mutated from the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus. Even the Moon Empress had chosen a few cinnabar sweet osmanthus to plant in the osmanthus garden on Leaning Moon Mountain. Many of them had been promoted to superior osmanthus phase after evolving and mutating. However, in Wenyu's impression, even the most flourishing cinnabar sweet osmanthus in the osmanthus garden on Leaning Moon Mountain was not half as flourishing as the one in Lin Yuan's hand. Looking at the clusters of blooming scarlet flowers, the tough cassia branches were already trembling under the pressure. Lin Yuan took the purple Ganoderma lamb soup that Wenyu handed over and drank a mouthful. He felt that after the tip of his tongue came into contact with the freshness of the lamb and the spiciness of the purple Ganoderma, his entire body became warm. After a big mouthful, a thin layer of sweat also appeared on his nose. Lin Yuan had to admit that Liu Jie's cooking was really getting better and better. Moreover, Liu Jie always liked to make medicinal cuisine during this period. Medicinal cuisine made from the collision of fresh and delicious ingredients and some spirit materials with medicinal properties really had a unique flavor. Lin Yuan looked at the time and realized that it was only a little past 6 o'clock. "Why are you up so early?" Brother Liu was always the first to wake up in Xiongchang's manor. Brother Liu usually woke up at 7. When Brother Liu woke up and made breakfast, when you came out of her room at around 7:30 and when you took the medicinal cuisine that Lin Yuan had taken a sip of and said softly, "Last night, young master said that he wanted to know about Du and he, so I asked the spirit servant who was cleaning the Hidden Moon Pavilion last night to help me look through Du and his biography. Wenyu had always understood her strengths and the role that she had to play in the private organization Sky City. When she had been a spirit attendant in the Radiant Moon Palace, she had always felt that she was extremely talented. Apart from her creation master aptitude, her strength was rather good among the other spirit attendants. However, after becoming Lin Yuan's personal assistant and getting to know Liu Jie, Listen, and even Chu Ci, he had become Lin Yuan's personal assistant. Wenyu knew that she couldn't be compared to others in terms of strength and talent. Therefore, Wenyu had now followed Mystic Moon's suggestion and started to help Lin Yuan manage his faction and organize information. They were determined to develop in the direction of internal affairs. After all, up until now, Wenyu herself was a little disheartened. This was because he had not even condensed a single willpower rune. When Lin Yuan heard that, he knew that she must have not slept at all last night. "Wenyu, what do you think about recruiting Du and he?" Wenyu pondered for a moment and said, "Young master, I think it would be a good choice if we could recruit Du and he." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan raised his brows. After he had established his faction, Sky City, it could be said that he had not put as much effort into it as Wenyu. Wenyu had always been the strictest among everyone when it came to the selection of talents. For Du and he to be able to bear the words "not bad" from Wenyu's mouth, in addition to his character, his talent should also be very good. "Tell me, what did you find out about Du and he last night?" Wenyu did not look at the organized information in her hands. Instead, she had long known about Du and his information. Du and his character is very good. When he was king class, he had the experience of serving as a spirit guard in the spirit guards. Upon hearing the word spirit guard, Lin Yuan was slightly startled. Since Lin Yuan's parents were both members of the spirit guard, he had a special feeling for the word spirit guard. In Lin Yuan's heart, everyone who protected the common people in danger was worthy of respect. They were also the most adorable people. Third update, seeking recommendation votes and monthly votes. Thank you to the most adorable and great people for carrying the burden in the wind and rain. End of this chapter. Chapter 593. Lin Yuan pondered for a moment and asked, "Apart from the spirit guards, has Du and he joined any other factions?" Upon hearing Lin Yuan's question, Wenyu shook her head. Du and he hasn't joined any other factions, but he joined an Emperor-class expert squad. I don't know why, but he withdrew from the team. However, Du and his strength is not bad. Du and his contract direction with phase is water-type attack Fey affinity. According to the Hidden Moon Pavilion's records, as of 3 years ago, his main phase were the suzerain Myth-I six-headed sea demon snake and the suzerain Myth-I thunder wave sky rumbling conch. Lin Yuan frowned slightly when he heard Wenyu talk about Du and his Fey affinity and the name of his main Fey. When Lin Yuan had seen Du and he he had been controlling a Diamond X Fantasy V Sword Plume Sea Eagle. However, not only did the Sword Plume Sea Eagle not match when use Fey affinity, but it was also not among Duan his main Fays. Does Duan he have a Sword Plume Sea Eagle among his other Fays? When you shook her head. Duan he probably can't afford to raise other Fays after raising a six-headed sea demon snake. However, he contracted a Source-type lifeform, the Phaseless bird, 5 years ago. The Sword Plume Sea Eagle that young master mentioned might be an evolved Source-type lifeform, the Phaseless bird. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan knew what was going on. The Source-type lifeform, the Phaseless bird, was the same as the Source seed that he had strengthened into Red Thorn. After the contract, it would mutate and evolve in a specific direction according to the contractor's requirements. Several Source-type lifeforms, the Phaseless bird and Source seed, had also been found in the Radiance Federation, and they were not single Source-type lifeforms. However, unlike Source seeds, which were treated as trash by people, the Source-type Phaseless bird was considered an extremely expensive Source-type lifeform. In terms of price, it was even comparable to a fairy Source-type lifeform. Lin Yuan recalled the Sword Plume Sea Eagle's abilities and exclusive skills that he had used true data to check and could not help but sigh. Duan he had really raised the Phaseless bird to such a state. This was because the Sword Plume Sea Eagle's pure pursuit of attack strength and attack range was simply too one-sided and extreme. However, he recalled that Duan his main contracted Fey was a six-headed sea demon snake. Lin Yuan increasingly felt that Duan he had nurtured the Phaseless bird into a Sword Plume Sea Eagle so that it could carry bricks better. Large-range AoE skills were convenient for harvesting dimensional lifeforms in the dimensional rift and quickly accumulating resources. The more he thought about it, the more he felt he knew the truth. The Sea Demon Snake was one of the strongest Fays in the same grade as the Class 5 Creation Master, Bamboo Monarch. However, the word strongest also made the Sea Demon Snake pay double the price. After the Spirit Chi Professional contracted the Sea Demon Snake, the price would be transferred to the Spirit Chi Professional. Every time the Sea Demon Snake grew a new head, it would require double the resources of the Fae of the same grade to allow the Sea Demon Snake to continue growing. Duan his main Fae was a Mythi six-headed Sea Demon Snake. In other words, the resources that Duan he had invested in the six-headed Sea Demon Snake could nurture 6 other suzerain Mythi Faes. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. On the one hand, Duan his main Fae was very powerful. If Lin Yuan could take Duan he under his command, it would be the same as taking in a member. He might not be invincible in the same grade, but he would be a very powerful and capable general. On the other hand, since the suzerain Mythi six-headed Sea Demon Snake was so difficult to nurture, Duan he should be very poor. That was great. The poorer, the better. Lin Yuan was afraid that Duan he was not poor. The poorer Duan he was, the more resources he needed. Lin Yuan was also very happy. While talking to Wen Yu, Lin Yuan had already planted the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus in the pit dug by the source sand. When the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus was planted in the soil, the petals on the branches had already fallen to the ground. They left a ground full of fallen petals. Even the morning air was filled with the sweet fragrance of Osmanthus. Wen Yu quickly took a flower broom and began to sweep the Osmanthus on the ground. She said, "Young master, with this Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus, our return from faraway manor can also brew Osmanthus honey in the future." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan revealed a bright smile. "That's right. This Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus is about to reach platinum. I wonder if the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus will be able to create a new life for itself after its core has been plucked. I wonder if it will create a new life for itself after it advances to the platinum level." When you knew that Lin Yuan wanted to nurture this Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus, she thought for a moment and said, "Young master, I'll go to the Leaning Moon Mountain later and bring back more vegetation spring water to carefully water this Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus." As soon as Wen Yu finished speaking, she saw a crystal bottle and an ordinary paper item appear in Lin Yuan's hand. Wen Yu was a creation master, so she could recognize at a glance that this paper item was an elemental source-type lifeform, paper elemental. When she looked at the viscous amber-like liquid in the crystal bottle in Lin Yuan's hand, Wen Yu's body could not help but tremble. The amber-like liquid in the bottle was the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar that had redeemed her with just one drop, allowing her to firm her path and obtain a new life. Wen Yu's heart trembled fiercely when she saw Lin Yuan's hand handing over the items. That paper elemental source-type item was fine, but this bottle of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar had at least 200 drops. A drop of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar was already priceless. This small bottle was something that Pinnacle factions could not obtain even if they went to the Leaning Moon Mountain and begged the Moon Empress for a year. When you didn't take it, Lin Yuan said, "Let's go. The elemental source-type item, paper element, is more suitable for you. Also, this bottle of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar can completely wash away the impurities on your body. After the impurities are washed away, you can contract the paper elemental source-type item. After that, I'll have a good night's sleep. I'll have enough energy to stay up all night." Wen Yu looked at Lin Yuan with an inexplicable emotion in her eyes. After taking a deep breath and taking the things in Lin Yuan's hand, Wen Yu spoke generously. "Many thanks, young master." The sun had already risen. As usual, Wen Yu summoned the source-type Earth Surge Golden Lotus and accompanied it to bask in the sun. Lin Yuan also went straight to the kitchen and checked the soup that Liu Jie had made for him. Liu Jie usually used a pot of soup in the kitchen when he cooked. Every time he used up some of the soup, Liu Jie would add some new soup. The soup that Lin Yuan had cooked in this pot for the whole night was the soup that Liu Jie had made for him last night with some specific ingredients. This pot of soup was also a small cheat that Lin Yuan had made for himself since he had not cooked for a long time and was somewhat rusty in cooking. Wen Yu tightly held the crystal bottle and the paper elemental source-type item in her hand. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew. First update, seeking monthly votes, recommendation votes. Come on, Motherland. Immortal heroic soul. End of this chapter. Chapter 594. This gust of wind blew down quite a few osmanthus flowers. One of the osmanthus flowers happened to fall into Wen Yu's hair. Wen Yu removed the cinnabar sweet osmanthus flower from her head. She suddenly discovered that this small osmanthus flower actually had quite a few faint lines on it. Even though the flower had already fallen from the tree, every pattern on the flower was engraved with the growth of the tree. Looking at the flowers and the paper elemental source-type item in her hand, Wen Yu had a dream. He recited softly, "I hope that I can turn into a piece of white paper and engrave all the marks about you and Sky City." Wen Yu's words were very light, but the wind was very strong. Perhaps only the cinnabar sweet osmanthus, who was against the wind, could hear these words. "If I were a piece of paper, the front of the paper would be a declaration, and the back would be a secret." Wen Yu's voice was a lot louder, but before she could finish her sentence, Wen Yu entered a state of epiphany, and a transparent paper-like willpower rune appeared in her mind. The spiritual energy around Wen Yu was swirling and dancing rapidly. Xian Yu reached out her chopsticks to pick up the dish on the plate. After carefully tasting it, she felt that the dish was extremely ordinary. However, his knife skills were very solid. It was just that each of these simple dishes had the taste of old soup. The taste of the soup could be said to be the finishing touch of the dish. It sublimated the taste of every dish. If it had been a year ago, someone would have come to Mount Clear Moon to pay a New Year's visit and cook a home-cooked meal for the Moon Empress. Xian Yu wouldn't believe it even if she was beaten to death. The Moon Empress might not be a picky eater, but she was abnormally picky when it came to food. Ordinary dishes and cooking methods simply couldn't enter the Moon Empress' mouth. But now, when the Moon Empress was eating her home-cooked dishes, the smile on her face never disappeared. Even Kang Yu's usual cold expression softened as she drank the soup Chu Ci served her. With such a comparison, Xian Yu's original intention of accepting him as her disciple became even stronger. Suddenly, Xian Yu thought of a young girl that she had taught before. After the meal, the Moon Empress said to Lin Yuan, "Little Yuan, head to the outer realm on the 7th of the mystic moon. The spatial passageway will be ready before the 15th. There was still a long time before you went to the Divine Wood Federation of the Auran continent, so I didn't tell you. Now, I'm going to tell you very seriously that any continent in the outer realm is a completely different world from the Radiance continent. When you get there, You have to know how to be cold. Upon hearing the Moon Empress words, Lin Yuan nodded seriously. Teacher, don't worry. Back when he was in the Abyss Dimensional Rift, he had yet to understand the dangers of the Outer Realm. In the upgraded Water World Dimensional Rift, Lin Yuan had a deep understanding of what kind of attitude he should take to face the Outer Realm's factions. When the Moon Empress saw that Lin Yuan had listened to her, she continued speaking. Do you want me to help you solve some of your other troubles? While speaking, the Moon Empress' eyes surged with faint killing intent and coldness. When Lin Yuan heard the Moon Empress' words, he knew that she was referring to the Zheng family. This was because he currently did not have any other troubles. His master, the Moon Empress, had already asked him once. It was obvious that the Zheng family was about to make a move. Lin Yuan shook his head and smiled. Teacher, if I can't hold on, I'll look for you. The Moon Empress reached out and gently rubbed the hair on top of Lin Yuan's head. She gently placed the flowing cloud beeswax wrapped extreme token on Lin Yuan's neck. I've already filled the extreme token with the moonlight domain. If there's any danger, just activate it. Don't hesitate. Lin Yuan looked down at the extreme token hanging on his neck. He faintly felt that the current extreme token was a little different from before. However, Lin Yuan could not pinpoint exactly what was different. Unlike the joyous and harmonious atmosphere in the Radiant Moon Palace, the atmosphere in the Indigo Azure City's Zheng family's third lineage was abnormally tense. Zheng Jiangliu and Zheng Wenbo stood at the side and looked at the cold-eyed youth sitting on the main seat. Even though the fire in the mansion was burning brightly, Zheng Jiangliu and Zheng Wenbo still felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts. The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce's Bai Chenghu knelt on the ground with his head lowered, afraid of offending the noble sitting on the main seat. Bai Chenghu did not know how long he had been kneeling. While kneeling, Bai Chenghu did not dare to circulate his spiritual power, causing his king-class expert's legs to be numb from kneeling for a long time. A cold snort came from the nose of the young man on the main seat, causing Bai Chenghu, who was kneeling on the ground, to stiffen. The fear in his eyes became even more intense. The main reason Bai Chenghu came to the royal capital this time was that he didn't know why the third lineage of the Zheng family, which had been supporting the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce behind him and the others during this period, suddenly ignored him. After arriving, Bai Chenghu didn't expect to see the core members of the main family behind the three lineages of the Zheng family. The second young master of the Zheng family. If it were during normal times, Bai Chenghu would probably jump up in joy in his sleep if he could see someone like the second young master. But now that Bai Chenghu knew about the trouble caused indirectly by the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce, he wished he could crawl into a crack in the ground. She avoided the sinister gazes of Zheng Jiangliu and his son. But compared to Zheng Jiangliu and his father's sinister gaze, the second young master who didn't even look at him made Bai Chenghu even more fearful. Zheng Jiangliu looked at Zheng Kaiyuan and said carefully, "Second young master, what do you think we should do?" When Zheng Kaiyuan heard Zheng Jiangliu's words, he slammed the table in front of him fiercely. He was so frightened that little Martin, who was in his arms, quickly burrowed into the loose sleeve of Zheng Kaiyuan's creation master robe. "What should we do? It doesn't matter if your Zheng family's third lineage Jiao Hansong is dead. But this young master's protector perished because of your Zheng family's third lineage's deaf and mute intelligence. Your Zheng family's third lineage still wants to ask me what to do." At this time, Zheng Kaiyuan's tone was like that of a superior existence, bossing and reprimanding his subordinates. From his words, he didn't treat the Zheng family's third lineage, which was attached to the main family, as his own people. Zheng Wenbo was already so frightened that he didn't dare to speak and shrunk behind Zheng Jiangliu. Zheng Jiangliu's expression was ugly to the extreme. However, underneath that ugly expression, there was more fear. Zheng Jiangliu spoke as though he had accepted his fate. "Second young master, I have already started to develop the resources in the coastal sea outside the Indigo Azure. By then, my third lineage will only take 20% of the business, and the remaining 80% will be second young masters." Zheng Kaiyuan's sharp eyes shot straight at Zheng Jiangliu. A small coastal sea controlled by a small character like the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Your third lineage has been planning for so long, but an unforeseen event actually occurred. Hehe, It seems like your third lineage is hiding a lot of things from me. Zheng Jiangliu's body tensed up. How would our third lineage dare to hide anything from second young master? In the future, our third lineage will be under second young master's command. Second update, requesting for monthly votes and recommendation votes. There will be a third update later. End of this chapter.